Chapter 186. The Queen didn't want to introduce the others. Miss Quinn, let's go to our residence and have a rest first. We have little contact with the outside world. After that, she smiled gently. This old woman was very similar to Thea's mother in some aspects. On one hand, she loved her daughter, and on the other hand, she was full of lies. She said that all the gods were dead, and when Diana believed it, she said that it was all in the story. She said that the sword was the ultimate weapon, and that it could kill the gods and destroy the world with one strike. In the end, it was pure nonsense. If it weren't for Diana's sudden outburst, she would have been fooled by her. Thea didn't want to expose her, so she nodded and said, "Thank you for your help, Your Majesty. Please call me Thea." Hey, this little girl is really good at talking. Hippolyte was tortured by the naughty child Diana every day for 5,000 years. Now that she saw the good-looking, gentle, and polite Thea, she immediately had a good impression of this girl. When she walked to the horse, she realized a problem. They all rode here. Does this outsider know how to ride a horse? She also knew that the outside world had entered the mechanical age. She turned around and asked, "Miss Thea, do you know how to ride a horse?" This question stunned her. She had already jumped off the skateboard to clear the misunderstanding. In order to avoid shocking the world, she didn't use the nano device. Instead, she held it in her hand and followed them on foot. When she heard Hippolyte's question, she was also stunned. She carefully thought about it. Many years ago, when old Robert took her and Oliver on vacation, she learned how to ride a horse. But after so many years, she didn't dare to say that she knew how to ride a horse. Thinking in her heart, she didn't stop walking. Now, her physical fitness was far better than the little girl back then, so it was no problem for her to learn now. But when she walked to a brown horse designated by Hippolyte, she grabbed the reins and jumped on the horse neatly. The horse sent her a very friendly signal. She didn't even need to use the reins to control the direction. With just a thought, she could accelerate and decelerate the horse. This is thinking about it again and again. Maybe it's because unicorns are their ancestors. Was that why he was so friendly to him? The moment Arthas entered the island, the airspace was sealed. She could not contact Arthas as well. After thinking for a while, she decided that there was no harm in doing so anyway. Thus, she followed the female warriors of Paradise Island into their residential area. Out of the corner of her eye, she glanced at the tall girl who seemed to be Wonder Woman. Their eyes met in the air. Perhaps it was because Thea's eyes were a little aggressive. The young Diana quickly retracted her gaze and looked straight ahead with a serious expression. Thea is a little amused. While casually responding to Hippolyte's seemingly concerned but actually probing questions, she lowers her head to communicate with the horse. The communication was extremely smooth. Thea finally confirmed that this was Paradise Island. Not only the horse she was riding, but the horses of more than 100 people around her were all female. There was not even a single male horse. When she asked them how they reproduce, the signals transmitted by the horses were very vague. It seemed that they did not know how to express themselves. They had the consciousness of reproduction in their nature, but there were indeed no male horses on this island. They seemed to have entered a cycle of birth, growth, death, and birth again. As for where they were born, they did not know. They were just born naturally. Thea was a little speechless. "Ninja Master, did you see that? You are not even as good as a horse. What are they?" They were repeatedly reborn, just like the eagle girl who was just sent back to wash the dishes. The eagle girl reincarnated 206 times in 4,000 years, and the horse's life was short, probably 500 times. How free are these gods? These divine powers were squandered without restraint. They created an island of Amazons, set up an anti-magic domain that would last for an unknown number of years, and gave them immortality. After that, they forgot all about this group of people after a night's sleep. No wonder these gods died. Usually, they wasted their divine power blindly, but when they fought, they found that they did not have enough divine power. They were really a group of examples of seeking death. Miss Thea, have you thought about the next step of the trip? If not, why don't you stay on our island for a few days? We have gatherings and competitions every day, and there is a bonfire party in the evening. It is very lively. Hippolyte had roughly confirmed that Thea was not a local by constantly beating around the bush. There were no other secrets that needed to be further confirmed. Thea was also very helpless. No matter how good her acting was, there were some things that could not be hidden. This shrewd old woman specifically asked questions that seemed to be common sense, but were actually very tricky. For example, the bill submitted by the American senator was very unreasonable. The advertisement for America's participation in the war was very well done. Was that person a star or a real soldier? And so on. Thea reluctantly confirmed that the current era was not bad. The plot of Wonder Woman had not yet started. It was now March 1918, a few months before the official start. But she did not dare to answer Hippolyte's question. Her history score was average. She might remember the president of 1918, but senators? How could she remember the names of so many senators? As for the war advertisement, she had never even seen it. The only person she knew who was a soldier and a star was Captain America. But that was in World War II, or the next universe. The result of her being unable to answer was that it triggered Hippolyte's above words, which seemed gentle, but in fact, it was irresistible. Of course, Thea could run out. At this time, Wonder Woman was not confident, or the time was not up. There was no absolute strength to stop her. She could certainly run if she wanted to, but if she ran out, where could she go? How could she go back to the original time and space? Waiting for the Wave Rider to find her was one way, but could they find her? The eye of Arcane Core was blown up, and Gideon could no longer receive the signal transmitted through the time stream. How could they find her at any point in time? Even if they had the intention, Thea did not have the patience to wait. If she stayed on Paradise Island, the land blessed by the gods, she might be able to find a way back. If she did not leave, what awaited her was definitely the truth lasso. This artifact could make anyone speak the truth, and it had never failed. She had a lot of secrets, and she could not let them know. No matter how hard she thought about it, she still couldn't make up her mind. Just when she finally made up her mind and was about to get on the skateboard and slip away, a huge beam of light shot up into the sky from a building not far away. The light was different from the fierce and direct sunlight. Instead, it had a hint of tranquility and serenity. Before Thea could understand what was going on, Hippolyte's expression changed drastically. She did not care about her, nor did she bring her entourage with her. She whipped her horse and galloped towards the beam of light. Chapter 187. A group of female warriors exclaimed, "Is that the direction of the temple? Are the gods going to descend again? Don't be ridiculous. It's most likely an oracle." The female warriors, who were still aggressive just a moment ago, changed as soon as Hippolyte left. A group of women began to discuss all kinds of things. The most imaginative one even said that the gods had nothing better to do and wanted to send another naughty child to the queen. Thea ignored the female warriors who had turned into ducks in a second and rode her horse to the naughty child Diana's side. She stretched out her hand and said, "Thea Quinn." The tall girl was a little stunned. She seemed to be wondering why Thea was talking to her. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and held Thea's hand. "Diana, I don't have a surname." Ha! It was indeed her, the only female among the elders of the Justice League. She finally met her in person today. Speaking of which, This was the third time that Thea had met the leader of the Justice League. However, compared to the confused Superman and the devastated Batman, the current Diana seemed very young and inexperienced. Her tone was full of uncertainty. She was still far from the heroine who would take charge of the Justice League in the future. "Do you know what's going on over there?" Thea asked. It was not strange for her to ask now. There were more than 100 people around them discussing. One more person would not make a difference. There was no need to avoid it. The honest Diana did not know that she had nothing to say. She thought seriously for a few seconds before shaking her head and said, "I don't know," but looking at Mother's expression, it should be something urgent. Thea felt more and more unkind now. The people she dealt with every day were gods or demigods like Horus and Diana. It was too challenging her personality. She cleared her throat and said, "Over there is your temple. Which gods do you serve?" This time, Diana answered very decisively. She started to talk about Zeus and gestured as she spoke. When she talked about the great achievements of a certain god, the worship on her face from the bottom of her heart made Thea feel a little stunned. So beautiful! The sun shone on the side of her face. Her eyelashes were extremely long, and her facial features revealed a kind of classical Greek beauty. The lines of her face were different from the gentleness of later generations. Instead, they were somewhat tough, but not disgusting. On the contrary, this kind of strong facial contour reflected her firm character. At this time, she still had long braids. She didn't have the big waves that she would later have, but the freshness of her hair was still intoxicating. Her gaze was like the ocean, calm and deep, as if there was a story behind it. However, if you angered her, you would have to face raging waves. This woman was simply perfect. Thea had seen her fair share of beauties, be it Madame Shiva's aloofness, Catwoman's elegance, or even Felicity's quick-wittedness. All of them paled in comparison. Her looks were a notch above the rest, but that wasn't the main point. Instead, it was the never-ending fighting spirit and uncompromising conviction in her body that elevated her temperament to an almost extreme level. This was the most promising aspect of her as a heroine. At that time, Hercules said, "What are you looking at?" Diana was still talking about the story made up by her mother. When she saw Thea staring at her with bright eyes, she couldn't help but stop. Thea knew that she was a little too focused. She was a real demigod, and her gaze was too long. It surprised her, so she quickly changed the topic. I'm looking at your eyes. Your eyes can see very far, right?" Diana was a little speechless. She was not stupid. She knew that she shouldn't reveal her secret to Thea, who she had just met. However, she was not as straightforward as Thea, who could make up lies like drinking water. While she was thinking about how to explain, Hippolyte came back on horseback panting. She was a little confused when she saw the two of them together, but she still said to Diana, "I'll interrupt you for a moment, my dear." Then she turned to Thea and said, "Can you talk with me?" Thea certainly couldn't say no. She obediently followed Hippolyte to a corner. At the same time, she thought to herself, "Why did this old woman call me? Is she going to do something dirty? She doesn't look like it." Although her body has been trained for a long time, she is far from Diana's oppressive aura. If they really fought, Thea would win. "Are you from another world?" Hippolyte didn't give her too much time to think and asked suddenly. Thea's face changed instantly. She found out so quickly. It was not wrong for her to say that she was from another world, but the word world was too vague. Time, space, and even higher latitudes could be called another world. How much did she know? The dramatic change in Thea's face couldn't be hidden from the queen, who had been working in human affairs for 5,000 years. Hippolyte was very satisfied with the result of her test. At this time, she completely let down her guard and said, It's our temple that sent an oracle to announce your arrival. From now on, you are our distinguished guest." In fact, the oracle was extremely vague, and the voice transmission was too weak. Hippolyte combined her various guesses and finally came up with such an answer that was a little far from the truth. Thea scratched her head. It doesn't matter if she is from another world. Maybe their god was afraid that she would say too much and change history. So he gave her a little change. She had to say that because of the power of Horus in the other world, she misjudged the era when the gods were lying at home and eating subsistence. She felt that the gods knew everything and were omnipotent. She carefully tested Hippolyte for a long time, but she didn't get the answer she wanted. She only got the conclusion that the gods had a premonition that she was coming. "Diana, come on, you take Thea for a walk around. I have to go back and prepare for the ceremony." She didn't know how many years had passed since she received the oracle again. Hippolyte was very happy and was a lot nicer to her daughter. She didn't treat Thea as an outsider at all, so she took the army back first. Thea was a little confused. "I haven't said anything yet, and I'm already cleared of suspicion?" Although she didn't understand what the gods had eaten wrong and let her in without asking, it was a good thing that she didn't have to escape at night. She began to run around the island with Diana. At first, Diana was afraid that her riding skills were not good enough, so she slowed down. But after running for a while, she found that she was almost one with the horse. There were only a few people on the island who could match her riding skills. Thea was competitive and said that she wanted to compete with her riding skills. She could feel the emotions of the horse from time to time. She only felt that the horse was as if it had taken stimulants, and it was always transmitting signals like it was very happy and comfortable. In any case, they didn't need to run on their own. If you want to compete, then so be it. The 2 men and 2 horses began to run in circles around the island. Chapter 188. After half a lap, Thea automatically slowed down her horse. She could tell that Diana was an excellent equestrian. Besides, the horse she was riding was much better than hers. She would be asking for trouble if she wanted to race with her. Thea did not need to be so outstanding. As she slowed down, Diana slowed down and started to introduce some landmarks to her. The total area of Paradise Island was quite large, but the central residential area was much smaller. There were only a few simple buildings, a temple, a sacrificial square, a training ground, and a residential area for the warriors. Thea rode her horse slowly. She saw that all the women were training hard, such as javelin throwing, fighting, and archery, which Thea was most familiar with. "Is there no one on your island who is involved in production?" She went around the island, but did not see a single farmer or herder. Everyone was busy practicing martial arts. When they met their relatives, they would use muscle break, and when they greeted their friends, they would use shield bash. Thea was not used to this kind of daily communication. "Production? Are you talking about animal husbandry?" "I've read a paper written by Dr. Michel in 1915 about animal husbandry and professional feed." Thea crossed her arms and listened to Diana's long speech about how to raise chickens, ducks, and geese, and how to plan the site systematically and scientifically. She was speechless when she heard that. It was obvious that this girl had been stifled for a long time. She clearly had the potential to be a scholar, but she was reincarnated into a place where people used their fists more than their brains. It was not appropriate to interrupt her directly, so she had to listen patiently. Diana talked a lot, from climate to soil and water to environmental factors. Finally, she concluded, "The food on our island is provided by God, so we don't have to waste our energy." Well, Thea's face twitched. To put it nicely, this girl was simple-minded. To put it bluntly, she was simple-minded. She looked curvy, but her mental age was still too young. No wonder she was charmed by Steve Trevor. Yes, a beautiful girl was charmed by a man because she had never seen a man before. Sia had seen Steve Trevor's photo in the original space-time. It was likely that he had some fortuitous encounter on Paradise Island. Almost 100 years had passed, and he still looked like a middle-aged man with a serious expression. He was still a distance away from being handsome. At least, Sia felt that he was far less handsome than Tommy and Oliver. As the leader of the Heaven's Eye Society, there were many people who attacked him openly and secretly. For example, Amanda Waller and Lila Michaels, who had already signed a treaty of friendship with Sia and were considered quasi-allies, would badmouth him for no reason, saying that he was dictatorial, undemocratic, and so on. Sia was more or less affected by it. Now that she thought about how such a white lotus had been bitten by a pig, she was even more upset. She was still a child. How could you do that? Steve Trevor must die. Well, I can't affect history. When the time comes, I'll just hide with Diana as far away as possible. Even if I meet him, Thea will do her best to break them up. Diana didn't know that Thea was thinking about her marriage, looking at her solemn face. She thought that she was thinking about what she said about animal husbandry. For the first time in her life, she felt the joy of being valued. She happily pulled Thea and continued to walk around. The two girls walked around the island for the whole afternoon and finally rushed back to the residential area before dinner. For people who were used to modern sound and light effects, this almost primitive style of sacrificial ceremony was indeed a little different. All the residents of the island participated in this bonfire party to prove that the gods were still paying attention to them, looking at them singing ancient battle songs and waving their limbs enthusiastically. Thea was a little sad. They probably knew that the gods had fallen, but they still had a little bit of hope in their hearts. Now that they had received the exact news, they could no longer suppress the excitement in their hearts. This was a kind of redemption of faith, excitement, and joy. But in this grand ceremony, there was still a trace of disharmony. She's over there. She's sitting on a stone chair and wearing red clothes. Artemis, that's not good. She's the queen's guest. A few chaotic voices entered Thea's ears. Red clothes? Thea didn't need to look around to know who they were talking about. Within a 10-mile radius of this island, she was the only one wearing red clothes. Sure enough, there were idiots everywhere. Paradise Island was not a paradise. Just as she was wondering which weakling was here to pick a fight, a black, tower-like figure stood in front of her. Her voice was not loud, but her words were not friendly. Outsider, don't think that today's sacrificial ceremony is held for you. This is our tradition. Do you understand? Her voice was slightly suppressed at first, but as she spoke, her voice became louder and louder. Who is this? Thea squinted her eyes and looked at the humanoid creature standing in front of her. Oh my God, this is too scary. It was already night. Although many torches were lit, the light was still flickering. At first, Thea did not notice this person when she first walked up to her. It was not until she spoke that she realized that there was a living person standing in front of her. This person was too dark, but under the light of the fire, she found that she was not the kind of black people on the African continent. After all, it was still strange for a black person to be mixed in with a group of white Amazons. She did not know if this person was born with dark skin or acquired it after being tanned. At night, her body reflected the oily light, revealing a body that was considered exaggerated even among men. There were 4 or 5 women behind this strong woman. When they saw Thea's eyes, they avoided her gaze. You are. Thea never avoided challenges. On the contrary, she had the courage to face any challenge, but she did not want to be used as a tool for nothing. She did not believe that the person who instigated this fool to come here did not have any political demands in the dark. It was nothing more than the grievances accumulated over the 5,000 years of Hippolyte's rule. Now that they had found an outlet, they wanted to defeat her and attack the political prestige of the queen. Alas, Thea sighed. Sure enough, humans were the most complicated animals. Whether they were born naturally or made of mud, they all had this bad habit. The strong woman clenched her left hand into a fist and slapped her almost muscular chest. I am Artemis. Thea was stunned for a few seconds. Ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. She laughed until she was out of breath and pounded on the stone table in front of her. She wasn't trying to provoke him. She really couldn't hold it in. Artemis was the legendary goddess of the hunt and the moon. Although she wasn't as beautiful as Aphrodite, the goddess of love, she was still one of the most beautiful women in the Greek pantheon. In the afternoon, Diana had told her that they had a tradition of giving the name of a god to someone in their tribe as a recognition, but Thea really did not expect that the name of the beautiful goddess of the night would be given to this charcoal head. Chapter 189. No matter how she looked at the person in front of her, she did not fit the image of someone who walked through the forest like the wind, quiet like a virgin, and moving like a fleeing rabbit. You guys think that God is not completely dead yet, so you chose this person. You guys are trying to anger him to death, aren't you? Thinking of this, Thea could no longer hold back her expression. She pointed at the brawny woman's dark face and laughed. Her provocation had achieved its desired effect. The brawny woman was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Her already huge eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She pointed at Thea with trembling lips. You. She could not finish her sentence for a long time. Thea laughed for a while and recovered some of her emotions. She covered her mouth and lowered her head. Sorry. I'm not laughing at you. Ha ha. I'm really not laughing at you. Her explanation was insincere. The Amazons were simple, but they were not fools. Me? I want. The brawny woman thought for a long time, but could not figure out what to do. At this time, someone behind her hesitated and whispered a few words in her ear. The brawny woman's expression changed drastically. However, under the persuasion of her companions, she still said to Thea with some hesitation, I want to launch a divine name challenge. I bet on my divine name. According to the rules, you must accept the challenge. Outsider. Artemis, what are you doing? Thea is not one of us. She is not bound by the rules of the tribe. Before Thea could answer, Diana, who heard something unusual, had already separated the crowd and walked over. After hearing the brawny woman's words, she was a little surprised and then angry. What do you think the honor of God is? Is this something that you can bet on? Diana's last few words were a little loud. They involuntarily attracted the attention of the Amazons, who were still singing and dancing nearby. A few people around her stopped dancing instantly, wanting to see what was going on. Under the collateral effect, the surroundings quickly quieted down. They looked at each other, gathered in twos and threes, and whispered to each other, exchanging what they knew about the incident. At this time, the tanned woman was also a little regretful. However, the arrow was already on the bow, and there was no way back. She would rather break than admit her mistake. She might as well kill her. At this point, she could only persevere to the end. She straightened her neck and looked at Diana without showing any signs of weakness. This is the right that God has given me. I will bet everything I have, my life and honor. The tanned woman had completely calmed down at this point. She looked at Diana with a burning desire to fight. This made Sia a little confused. Is he challenging me to a duel? Why are you looking at Diana? Could it be that the tradition here is that whoever comes to mediate a fight should beat up the mediator first? What a delightful tradition. She crossed her arms and didn't say anything. After staring at Diana for a long time, the tanned, strong woman finally remembered who she was. She looked at Miss Thea unhappily. What is the challenge? Thea definitely wouldn't back down. Looking at the black woman's strong physique, she knew that it wouldn't be a competition of advanced mathematics or programming, but she still had to ask, "Wait a minute." Hippolyte interrupted their conversation in a timely manner. Although Thea's magic was now sealed, her spiritual power was still there. She had long discovered that the queen was hiding in the distance and watching them. She didn't jump out until the situation was almost out of control. Fortunately, the people here were simple and honest, so they didn't shout, "Long live." Sia also followed the crowd and bowed slightly as a greeting. "Artemis, do you know what you are doing?" Hippolyte looked anxious, just like a good queen who loved her people like her own children. For Sia, who followed Moira every day, this expression was too familiar. It was the kind of expression that gazed at you with care, but in fact, she was cursing you in her heart. Why didn't you just die? But the simple Amazon people liked this. The tanned, strong woman knelt on one knee and shouted with all the strength in her chest, "I know, I am willing to bear everything. If I fail, I will leave my home and go to the outside world to wait for death." Her words were resolute and unwavering, which made Thea, who was originally watching the fun, a little moved. Hippolyte's eyes showed a hint of joy, but she quickly put on the expression of a loving mother and hugged the tanned, strong woman who was kneeling. "Why are you doing this? Are they instigating you?" She looked at the people behind her and secretly remembered their names. The queen, with excellent political skills, needed to pull out the radish and bring out the mud. She didn't care about a brainless black woman, but the tanned, strong woman was not as cunning as her. She had already forgotten that she was instigated to make trouble. She insisted that it was her idea, and no one instigated her. "Well, then I can only bless you, my child. May the lightning of the Heavenly Father always illuminate your road ahead." Hippolyte showed off her acting skills and gained a lot of support. She then turned to ask Thea, as a respected guest, "It seems rude of me to say this, but are you willing to accept her challenge? If you win, you will get the divine name of the moon god. At that time, you will be our sister, and we will be inseparable." "I'm willing." Thea couldn't back down. As for what would happen if she lost, she didn't think about it. According to the tanned, strong woman, if she lost, she would have to leave the island. For them, leaving the island was more important than losing their lives. But for Thea, all that was left was hee-hee. In order to take care of the feelings of the people on the island, Hippolyte couldn't support her publicly. She secretly gave her a look that said, "I'm very optimistic about you." As for winning or losing, she didn't care about it. No matter what, it was beneficial to her. Hippolyte then left with a few guards. "Thea, you shouldn't have agreed." Diana, who was now a friend, waited for the crowd to disperse and said with some urgency, "This simple child didn't know the intricate relationship behind this. She just saw the upcoming duel." Speaking of the duel, Thea remembered. Damn it, these people didn't tell her how she was going to challenge them. Fortunately, there was someone in front of her who understood. That tanned, strong woman just now. Thea pointed at the tanned, strong woman who had already walked away. What is she going to challenge? Diana's small mouth opened slightly. She was a little surprised. "You don't know? You accepted the challenge without knowing?" Thea looked at her speechlessly. "How would I know? No one told me. Is it in the arena over there?" When Thea came, she saw the circular arena full of ancient Roman style. She didn't know if it was originally there or built later, but it looked very imposing. "No, you are going to accept the divine name of the moon god. The time and the method of the duel are not set. These are all things that the elders of the moon gods, priestly group, need to ask for the oracle." Diana carefully explained to her. "What are the elders of the priestly group?" Everyone here looked the same, and she couldn't use the eye of Horus to observe them. She really couldn't remember if she had seen these old women before. Chapter 190. Since Diana didn't know either, Thea decided to put the matter aside. As for the oracle, who are you kidding? Why did you find such a dark and strong guy with the name of the goddess of the night above his head? Is this a god's approval? Most of the competitions were arranged by a few old guys according to the conditions that were favorable to them. You guys can just bully the goddess who can't move and use the name of the gods to fool her. Sia had an expression as if she had already seen through it. She pulled Diana, who was still thinking about the challenges, back to the temporary residence. Diana, who was a warm-hearted person and also wanted to know what the outside world was like, told her mother and moved in with Thea. Thea was organizing her equipment. She didn't have many things with her, and only a few items with magic attributes could be put into the tattoo space. She wrapped the USB flash drive given by Captain Frosty with magic and sent it into the tattoo space. Now the tattoo space was completely sealed, and she didn't know what was going on inside. The Kevlar on her body had automatically appeared after the fusion was removed. The skateboard had been conveniently placed in the pocket of her combat suit at the time, and the mechanical arm had also been disguised as an accessory. These pieces of equipment had all escaped the disaster. The only pity was that the bow and infrared glasses that had been with her for almost 2 years were lost in the explosion. She was deeply regretful. Just as she was lamenting the lack of space, Diana came to her with a few sets of clothes. "Is this for me?" Thea raised the linen robe in front of her and looked at it carefully. It was just ordinary linen clothes, the kind that could be worn by any body type. The process of changing clothes was actually the process of taking off the combat suit. Diana exclaimed, "Oh, this is underwear, right? I've only seen pictures of it in books. It looks very smooth. Let me touch it. Hey, don't run away." Thea didn't expect to be teased by Little White Flower. She was a little depressed. She quickly put on the clothes that looked like a sack and tied a cloth belt around her waist. "Where are we going?" The two of them left the residence with Diana leading the way. The two of them slowly walked through the neighborhood. When they arrived at the entrance of a cave, Thea could not help but ask. If she didn't know that this woman was the future Wonder Woman, she would have thought that she was going to do something shady. What was she doing in a cave at night instead of sleeping? The bathing pool was given to us by the gods. Don't you outsiders take a bath? I heard that the Black Death is everywhere. Before Diana could continue her tirade, Thea quickly interrupted her. Stop. There's no more Black Death outside. And we also bathe regularly." Thea could see through her. This girl's curiosity about the outside world was so strong that it was about to explode. The more curious she was, the more her mother would not allow her to go out. She could only desperately read those messy books, and this vicious cycle made her even more curious. She sighed. Her destiny was definitely outside, and this small island could not bind her. Her mother must have realized this as well, which was why she allowed her to fool around with her. Not long after they entered the cave, they saw a pool of clear water. However, it looked a little green against the stone walls of the cave. Diana was dressed very simply, or rather, the entire Amazon tribe was dressed very simply. She took off her half-body armor, tugged on her skirt, and swung her shoes. There was nothing else. Her beauty was indeed amazing. The gods' blessings made her body reach the peak of human beauty. Despite Thea's many adventures, she was still not as beautiful as Diana. Her body was even more tragic, so it was better not to mention it. Seeing that an ancient person like her was so honest, as an open-minded person from the 21st century, there was nothing to be shy about. Thea took off her clothes that were like a sack, undid her underwear, and tested the water temperature. It was not as cold as she had imagined. Instead, it had the fragrance of plants and the slight warmth of a hot spring. Not bad. You Amazons really know how to enjoy life, Thea said as she unconsciously turned to look at Diana. However, she almost fell into the pool. At this moment, the honest Beauty was holding her underwear and gently touching it. She seemed to feel that it was not bad, and even brought it to her nose to sniff it. Just as she was about to taste it with her tongue, Thea snatched it away. Diana, this is very personal. It's rude of you to touch it like this. Oh, I'm sorry, but you smell really good. Are all outsiders like you? Diana immediately admitted her mistake, but she still asked curiously. The two beauties were standing and chatting so honestly, and they were even talking about a very serious topic. This scene was not harmonious at all. Thea quickly pulled her into the pool until her body was completely submerged in the water. She felt inexplicably relieved. As for her so-called good smell, although it was a little shameful, Thea had already noticed it. Her good relatives had not visited for a while. Whether she admitted it or not, as she absorbed more and more light, she was getting further and further away from being a pure earthling. In the end, she was not sure whether she would become a divine creature or a new species. I'm a hero. How can everyone be like me? Thea was very proud of this. If all the people on Earth were at her level, the world would have been in chaos. Who knew whether the Kryptonians or the Earthlings would invade each other? Hey, what are you doing? Thea was about to take advantage of the fact that she did not know anything to boast, but before she could finish, she felt that she was very close to her. Thea looked serious, and her nose twitched slightly. You are indeed not an ordinary person. Your smell is far beyond what is recorded in the books. Are you also a child of God? Diana was getting more and more curious about this guy who had fallen from the sky. She and the girls on the island had lived for thousands of years, but except for a few people, she did not have a good relationship with the rest of them. Of course, it was partly because of Hippolyte's protection, but also because she did not fit in with the group. She had tried to improve her relationship with them, but the smell of those people made her naturally unable to get close to them. For a long time, she even thought that she was an alien living alone in the world, a pitiful worm that no one understood and sympathized with. Now that she had met Miss Thea, who was originally not in the timeline, she seemed to have found her own kind in an instant, and Thea's sunshine and tranquility unconsciously attracted her. This was not an attraction in temperament or appearance, but it was a kind of touch in the deepest part of her soul. In fact, she did not understand it, but it was a mutual attraction of divinity. A child of God. Thea was a little surprised. If Malcolm heard this, he would be happy to be called a god by a demigod. Unfortunately, this was just a beautiful misunderstanding. Thea turned slightly to let her see her unicorn tattoo. This is my bloodline mark. My ability comes from this. Chapter 191. It's true that I've never seen such power before, but it feels very comfortable. Diana unconsciously reached out to touch Thea's shoulder. She didn't know if it was because it felt particularly good, but her fingers were full of artistic aura. They didn't become thick because of holding swords for a long time. A few of her fingers were neither fat nor thin, and when she touched Thea's smooth back, it made her feel strange. That. Her Majesty is your mother? What about your father? Thea was trembling from the touch. In order to divert Diana's attention, she asked the obvious. Sure enough, Diana's thoughts were diverted. She was a little depressed. She reached out and fiddled with the water in the pool. My mother said that my father is Zeus, the king of the gods, but I've never seen him. He probably doesn't care about me. Thea couldn't agree with this point. Doesn't care about you? He can give you such great power, directly raise you to the maximum level, and give you a full set of epic equipment. Compared to her, She was a beggar. This kind of God's second generation was even more enviable than Superman. Superman's father had left his son a cape that looked cool, but was actually a hindrance. The equipment that Boss Zeus had given Diana included attack, defense, escape, and control equipment. It could be said that all of them were practical. He was definitely her biological father. Your father must love you. Thea didn't dare to say more. What about your parents? They must be very good to you. Your aura is so bright. They must be a good couple. Diana obviously didn't want to talk about her situation and changed the topic to Thea. My parents? They are very good to me. Yes, they were good to her. Of course, if you ignored Malcolm's cold-blooded killing and Moira's lies, then they must be good people. Diana was very curious about the structure of families in the outside world. She asked in a very open voice, "Were you born naturally through the union of your parents?" Thea's face turned green. What do you mean? Could it be that I was picked up? This girl is too bad with words. She could only reluctantly answer, "It's like that outside. Did you see them when they were having intercourse? What is it like?" Oh my God. Zeus, save me. Thea was about to break down. How could I see it? No matter how open Europe and the United States were, there was still a limit. Thea could only shake her head with an ugly expression. However, she soon realized that Diana's question was extremely profound, and her understanding was too narrow. What I mean is, how was life first conceived? Did it really grow out of his body? What was it like when you were first born from your mother's womb? She touched her smooth belly with a look of disbelief on her face. Thea really doesn't know how to answer her more and more off-topic questions. Nowadays, except for those who travel through time, who has seen the scene of their own birth? Fortunately, she was quite knowledgeable. She rambled on about the origin of living things to Diana. If someone were to eavesdrop on them, they would definitely think that two expectant mothers were discussing the problem of giving birth. In fact, they were light years away from that stage. The two sat in the pool, very honestly, and talked about the process of the birth of life. Halfway through, Diana compared the theories she read from many casual books with Thea's explanation. She found that what the books said was very accurate. Thea was a little speechless about the books that she was holding on to. What's the point of just talking about theories? The most important thing is to combine theory with reality. Come, lie down, I'll tell you the truth. Indescribable scenes floated past. The two returned to their room, refreshed. Thea was like a caring sister who kept answering Diana's various questions. Fortunately, the original Thea was quite good at her studies. The fusion transmigrator also read more books. She could barely cope with Diana's questions from the sky to the sea. Later on, Thea's head became heavier and heavier, and she fell asleep in the midst of the endless questions. Thea, get up, get up. Do you people from the outside world all sleep like you? Diana woke up early and found that she was still asleep. She did not disturb her. According to the tribal practice, she went out to practice martial arts and went through a lot of trouble. After breakfast, she came back and found that Thea was still sleeping. The quality of sleep was too good. We shouted loudly outside. Didn't you hear us? Thea sat up in a daze. She did not feel that there was a problem. How many young people did not like to sleep? Besides, her physique was the type that would grow naturally even if she did not exercise. There was no need for her to train in the hottest days of summer or winter. Before she finished yawning, an old woman in a robe walked out from behind Diana. "Miss Thea, good morning. It seems that you had a good rest. This morning, we will hold the first competition of Artemis in the square. You must maintain your strength." After that, the old woman patted her on the shoulder as if she was concerned. She left the hut with a smile on her face. Diana was also a little confused about the old woman who came and left in a hurry. She did not wait for Thea to wake up and ran away after saying a few words. She said it too simply. She didn't tell you what the competition was. This is against the rules. Sia waved her hand. This old woman was obviously an opponent of Hippolyte. She was just skirting the boundaries of the process. Did she mention the process? She said it, but she did not say everything. At most, she would say that she was not meticulous in her work. There was no big problem, but her purpose was very vicious. She was determined to teach Thea a lesson and finally destroy the reputation of Diana's mother. Sia was quite familiar with this kind of method, this kind of workplace method of making things difficult for others was a bit unpresentable. However, although she was familiar with it, she was definitely unhappy. She thought to herself, "Old woman, I'll remember your face. Just you wait. In a few months, when the Germans come, I will not save you even if you die in front of me." After putting on her clothes, she pulled Diana, who was still angry. "Let's go. Take me to breakfast first." When they arrived at the cafeteria, Thea was a little uneasy. This group of people was too explicit. They did not even leave breakfast for her. They used the excuse of exercising too much in the morning and finished it all. "If you want to eat, come early tomorrow. We are militarized. That's it. You can do whatever you want." Fortunately, Thea was not an ordinary person. She did not feel hungry even if she did not eat for 10 days or half a month. Her daily consumption was various kinds of light in her body. Now, her absorption ability was banned, but her body was still there. Thea missed the breakfast on the Wave Rider very much. No matter how unpleasant Gideon was to her, he did not say that she should starve. Sure enough, the worst thing these days was people. Whether they were born naturally or made of mud, they were all bad. No wonder those artificial intelligences wanted to destroy the world after awakening. People were so bad that even machines could not stand it. "If you don't want to eat, then don't eat." Thea angrily followed Diana to the square. Chapter 192. This was the second time Sia had come to their tribal square. Unlike the grand celebration last night, the square was filled with a solemn and dignified atmosphere. It was about the size of 4 football fields, and the ground was paved with green bricks. When walking on it, one wouldn't feel uneven at all, as if it was flat ground. Needless to say, this must be the work of the gods who had nothing better to do. The people here regarded fighting as glory and labor as a disgrace. They would not even pick up the fallen soy sauce. This road was definitely not built by them. At least, Thea did not see any excavators or other engineering equipment here. With their productivity and values, how could they build such a flat road without the intervention of divine power? There was no rostrum at the scene, and no one was playing the athletes' march. There were only 2 participants. Thea saw a strong woman standing straight as soon as she entered the square. The woman was about 8 meters tall, and was the second tallest woman after Diana. Her muscles were like cast iron. Her eyes were closed, and her nose was slightly trembling. It was obvious that she was very nervous now. Thea did not care. She did not care about the name of the gods at all. Seeing Hippolyte standing in the middle, she went forward to greet her out of courtesy. "Your Majesty, how was your rest? Diana did not disturb you, did she?" At this time, Hippolyte was full of smiles. She took her hand and chatted with her for a while. Then she turned her head and introduced her to her. "This is my sister, Diana's teacher, Antiope." "Oh, Wonder Woman's teacher." Thea looked at the capable middle-aged woman and bowed slightly. "I've heard a lot about you." Antiope frowned. "Miss Thea, do you know martial arts?" It could not be helped. After the awakening of her sorcerer bloodline, Sia was too deceptive. Her muscles were not obvious, and people would only think that she was working out. Compared to the women on Paradise Island, who had bulging muscles There was a huge visual difference. Thea was a little embarrassed to answer her question. When she was wandering around with Diana, she had seen the female warriors on the island practicing martial arts. Of course, they did not hide it from her. Their martial arts were very skillful and simple. Perhaps it was because of their immortality, their individual foundations were very solid. Whether it was archery, combat, or various combinations of swords and shields, they used them very well. However, their fighting style was too ancient. Modern society had been developing for thousands of years, and countless elites had added their own understanding to their fighting style. Although their lifespan was not as long as the female warriors of Paradise Island, their fighting knowledge had been passed down from generation to generation. The accumulation of knowledge was terrifying. On the contrary, the Amazonian female warriors had become more and more conservative because of their infinite lifespan. If the fighting level of the outside world had improved by 4,000 years, they had only improved by 200 years. Thea was very confident in defeating them. If she didn't use any strengthening spells, she could defeat 5 to 7 female warriors with her bare hands. This was under the condition that their physical fitness was higher than that of human beings. If she activated all her technological equipment to recover her magic power, then they would all die. Now, in the face of Antiope's question, they directly answered that they were all a bunch of weaklings. Definitely not. She could only evade the question and say, "I practiced at home." As for what level they were at, they would see for themselves later. Hippolyte introduced her to the 3 middle-aged women in robes on the other side. One of them nodded to Thea with a serious face and ignored her. The other 2 were much more enthusiastic, and one of them was the woman who informed her about the competition in the morning. With Hippolyte's introduction, Thea knew that the 3 of them were priests of the temple. However, their miracles were rare now. The 3 priests were responsible for the daily worship of the 12 main gods of Olympus. Hearing this, Thea almost laughed again. "You are too impious. If there is no miracle, you will reduce the number of priests. You will arrange for the clergy to have secondary jobs. Needless to say, it must be Diana's mother who did this. She changed the priests into warriors under her direct leadership. It would be strange if the remaining priests were of the same mind as her." Thea was really not interested in participating in this kind of traditional struggle between theocracy and royalty. This kind of thing could be seen everywhere in Europe's thousands of years of history. It was not rare. Thea chatted with a few leaders who seemed to be the leaders of the country, but in fact, the population under their jurisdiction was not even comparable to a village. She stood alone and rested. She originally wanted to find a place to sit, but when she saw several village leaders standing under the hot sun, she could only swallow her words. As a quasi-military management, the people of Amazon gathered very quickly. Thea stood for less than 5 minutes, and a large number of female warriors had walked into the venue. They stood in rows and rows, ready to be quiet spectators. "Everyone is here?" Thea was curious. How many people were there? It was too inefficient to count them one by one. She secretly opened the eye of Horus, glanced at them, and instantly understood. 1,550 people. The people on the field just felt a chill and did not notice anything strange, but Diana stared at her eyes in surprise. What did she feel just now? Divine power. Although it was completely different from her divine power, the nature was definitely not wrong. That was the real divine power. Was this girl, named Thea, the child of God? Diana was a little confused. Hippolyte waited for everyone to arrive and loudly announced the start of the divine name challenge. In fact, there was a bit of a logical problem with calling it a challenge. Thea was muddle-headed and was challenged, but the other party put everything on the line, and several village leaders acquiesced to the name of the challenge. There should have been a segment to introduce the 2 sides, nothing more than who this person was, what achievement she had, why she came to challenge, and so on. But now Thea was not one of them, and they did not know what advanced deeds Thea had done. Who knew if what she said was true or false? They could not use the truth lasso to extort a confession before the competition, right? That would be too disrespectful to the gods. They thought about it and decided to skip this step. Hippolyte motioned for everyone to be quiet and roughly told them about the past of Artemis. The Amazons all knew about it, but Sia didn't care. She just said a few words in a neutral tone. Then several priests pushed each other, and finally the cunning old woman that Thea saw in the morning walked out of the crowd and shouted, "Artemis is the goddess of the hunt, and her oracle tells us that the first game is javelin throwing." Wow, everyone exclaimed. It could not be helped. Although Thea was 7 meters tall, she was of average height among these people. Compared with the muscular women, she was definitely thin and weak. On the other hand, the dark-skinned woman was 8 meters tall, and her arms were as thick as Sia's thighs. She looked like a person with great strength. The basic conditions of this competition were clearly unfair. Chapter 193. Sia was well aware that these old fellows were up to no good. They had chosen the right time to do so. Normal people would not be able to sleep well on their first night in a new environment and guessing the content of the competition. However, Thea woke up naturally as if nothing had happened. Since their first plan did not work, they came up with a second one. They took advantage of the fact that she had just woken up and was not fully awake to call for a meeting. They even canceled breakfast in order to cause Thea to be mentally and physically exhausted. Then they called out the tanned and strong woman who had been recuperating for a long time to compete. Moreover, the opponent seemed to be good at throwing javelins. Looking at Thea's small arms and legs and the opponent's tall and strong figure, there was almost no suspense in this competition. The worst priest looked at Thea with a smile. Although he looked kind, he was thinking about how to lead the topic to Thea when this outsider begged for mercy and quit. This bastard. Thea smiled and looked at the people around her who were pointing at her. She thought to herself, if this old thing was an employee of the Quinn Group, he would definitely arrange for her to go to Siberia to experience life. "Hey, can you?" Diana asked quietly when she saw Thea's indifferent expression. It was no wonder that she was worried. The anti-magic territory on this island was too strong. Thea was directly sealed. As a demigod, Diana was stronger, but more than half of her divine power was also sealed. She grew up in a high anti-magic territory and did not realize how strong she was before she left the island. Thea nodded, of course, to show that she was fine. Just watch. Ever since she figured out the intention of these people, she equipped the mechanical arm under her battle suit. It fit her arm perfectly and was covered by her clothes. "You want to play dirty with me? I'll play with you." Originally, I wanted to have a fair competition, but they did not intend to play fair at all. Since they did not follow the rules of the game, Thea was ready to let them know what it meant to be strong. Time passed quickly, and a female warrior carrying 2 javelins arrived in front of several faction leaders. Hippolyte also didn't expect that these people would make such a low-skill competition. Although Sia's victory or defeat didn't affect her much, it was better to win than to lose. She picked up 2 javelins and looked at them. Not bad. They didn't tamper with them. When Thea and the dark-skinned woman stepped forward to take the javelin, she whispered to Thea, "Don't feel pressured. It doesn't matter if we win or lose." Thea responded with a bright smile. "Am I cheating? He still couldn't win? Not to mention this He Da Zhuang. Even if Diana personally went up against him with such a strong anti-magic domain, she might not be as strong as him." The crowd automatically opened up a gap. Their meaning was very simple. You just have to throw it at a place where there is no one. Who's first? Thea saw that He Dazhuang was angry and didn't speak, so she could only ask. She couldn't throw it at the same time, right? The other party shamelessly insisted that she threw the javelin in the distance. If Thea didn't want to explain, she would have to throw it again. Thinking of this scene, she felt that it was ridiculous. Moreover, this kind of scene with a large group of people watching was enough. Without waiting for He Dazhuang to reply, the priest who made Thea look very annoying jumped out again and said with a kind face, "You are the guest, let Artemis go first." Thea nodded and took a few steps back. This old guy wanted to let the dark-skinned woman get a good result to destroy her confidence. She waved her hand and motioned for them to go first. Because this was not a formal competition, there was no boundary on the ground. The referee's standard was the eyes of the audience. If you ran 2 steps, no one would say anything. He Dazhuang adjusted his breathing and raised his state to the peak. He picked up the javelin with his right hand and ran fiercely. Thump, thump. The low sound of footsteps accompanied his footsteps for more than 10 meters. He Dazhuang felt that all the muscles in his body had been fully mobilized. He kicked the ground, twisted his waist, and bent his arms. The momentum of the whole person jumped to the extreme, and then burst out in an instant. Ah! The javelin in his hand flew out like lightning, passing through countless people's retinas, drawing a beautiful arc and plunging into the soil in the distance. Not bad. Thea looked at it a little. It was 500 feet. Converted into meters, it was 150 meters. Amazing! The world record for the javelin was a little more than 100 meters. This guy easily broke the world record by 50 meters. This group of guys who were molded out of the earth really had a higher physical fitness than the human extreme value. The priests who deserved to be beaten probably knew this and proposed this competition. The surrounding discussion finally sounded at this time, and several priests on the high ground did not have the intention to stop it. Artemis, this is probably the best result in her life. Some of the people close to He Dazhuang said with envy, "I'm afraid that stranger is in trouble." This was a cynical remark of a neutral nature. The only one who had a good attitude towards Thea, Diana, was dragged by Hippolyte and did not participate in the discussion. Thea directly ignored the noise around her. A while ago, the major media in Star City scolded her miserably, but she was indifferent. These people's gossip could not shake her mind at all. What's more, she did not need any mind. The mechanical arm was fully powered, and the strength value was increased to about 5 tons. He Dazhuang could not even reach 1 ton. She could easily crush her. Hey, why is this person throwing with his left arm? Left-handed. Her posture is so amateur. Has she never thrown before? The onlookers discussed with each other. Thea was also very helpless. She really did not practice the javelin. She had seen it on TV, but she had never touched it in reality. Moira's goal was to cultivate a lady. When she was young, she learned piano, yoga, and so on. Who would teach their daughter to practice the javelin? Old Ma and Miss Shiva were also skilled in martial arts. Perhaps the only person Thea knew who could throw the javelin was Batman. However, she had to put a question mark because she had never seen the old man use it. The surrounding people's discussion made her a little depressed. The tone of these people was completely like they were talking about a country bumpkin. This person has never practiced the javelin. Their tone was like saying that modern people had never touched the internet. Come on, who in modern society would practice this? You guys are the country bumpkins. Automatically shielding the surrounding noise, she shook the metal javelin. She did not have any flexibility, feel, and so on. She also did not know those professional postures. Standing in place, she grabbed the javelin with her left hand and bent her arm a few times. The weight was as if it did not exist. She turned her head and looked at the bad priest, who was about to faint with joy. Then I will throw it. You guys watch carefully. Well, we are watching. You can rest assured and throw it boldly. The bad priest was so happy that he almost laughed out loud, but he restrained himself. Chapter 194. Thea looked at the old face with a smile and asked, "Then I'll start. You must work hard and throw it far away with all your strength," the bad priestess said as she made a throwing motion with an expression of encouragement. The two of them looked at each other and laughed happily. Diana, who was at the side, was a little confused. Thea began to make gestures on the spot. With her martial arts foundation and strong memory, such a simple throwing motion was not difficult at all. She could understand it at a glance, but she was not used to using her left hand to exert force. She tried it on the spot, but it was not coordinated. "Forget it. I'm not practicing anymore." The force exertion method was not scientific, so the effect was definitely not as good. However, the force was too great. The run-up and lunge were useless. She bent her arm back, and the mechanical arm operated at full power. Whoosh! She threw the javelin out. The metal javelin made a hissing sound in the air and disappeared from everyone's sight in 0.1 seconds. It turned into a small black dot and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. The scene was silent for a moment. What was the meaning of this? Other than Thea and Diana, who was somewhat sure that she was the child of God, everyone else was stunned. The bad priestess widened her eyes and glared at Thea, who was smiling like a flower. You trick." She did not know what to say. She wanted to say that the result did not count, but she was not so thick-skinned as to say that in front of thousands of people. Hippolyte looked at the three priestesses with a smile. "What do you think of this result?" As long as they said that the result did not count, she would immediately counterattack. There were so many people at the scene, and no one would support their nonsense. "Let's discuss." The old priestess, who had been silent all this time, pulled two of her companions, who were blushing. The three of them went to the side to discuss. They went to the side and whispered. The thousands of people at the scene were almost in an uproar. "Did you see that? It flew to the horizon. That's terrifying. How can she have so much strength with such a small body? Could it be the divine power of Hercules? I wonder who is stronger, her or Diana." The crowd was whispering, but Thea did not care. She put away her mechanical arm and walked to Diana's side. Thea did not know that her actions had caused a new misunderstanding. She and Diana are very close. They are indeed the same type of people. As the three priests reached an agreement and returned to the center, the crowd quickly quieted down. The solemn leader of the priests pointed to a female warrior. "Go and see, where did you throw it? You calculate the distance." She no longer had any hope for this competition, so she chose the neutral female warrior. She only wanted to get a result and end this awkward scene quickly. The female warrior glanced at Hippolyte and got the queen's nod. Then she mounted her horse and galloped in the direction where the javelin had disappeared. 15 minutes later, the female warrior rode back with an anxious look on her face. Turning over and dismounting, the female warrior knelt on one knee. "I swear to God that what I said is true." Several leaders nodded and motioned her to continue. The female warrior glanced at Thea with a little fear. "I found the javelin thrown by this distinguished guest 2 miles away. At that time, the head of the javelin was inserted into the rock, a foot deep." Her voice was not small, and the people around her heard it clearly. It was strange enough that the javelin had flown 2 miles, but now the head of the javelin was inserted into the rock by a foot. There were 1,500 people in the Amazon tribe who could not throw javelins. Thea's javelin could penetrate the rock. What did this mean? This showed that the remaining force was not exhausted. If there was no rock, maybe it could fly a few hundred meters. Everyone looked at Thea as if they were looking at a monster. Is this a human? Are all the people outside so terrible? It turned out that the Father did not let us go out to protect the human race, but to protect us. At this time, Hippolyte spoke. Priests, can you announce the result of the first round of the competition? The queen was far from being as pious as she appeared to be. Zeus, the king of the gods, was her man, who would worship their own man, not to mention a man who had an affair. Distance creates beauty and faith. She treated the king of gods like this, and her attitude towards the other gods was almost equal. Therefore, when Thea first came, the oracle had an impact on her, but it was not big. At that time, she did not care about the face of the priests of the temple and directly interpreted the oracle, which was the fuse of today's incident. The priests hoped to reduce Thea's right to speak by attacking her. As long as they defeated Thea, they could say that Hippolyte's interpretation of the oracle was wrong, and they could regain some of their right to speak. Unfortunately, now it was all destroyed by Miss Thea. The old priest reluctantly announced, "The first game is the distinguished guest from outside. Miss Thea Quinn wins." After that, he pretended to hold Thea's hand to show goodwill. These guys kept talking about outsiders and outsiders. Originally, this was an indisputable fact. Thea was not crying and shouting to join them, but their words reminded the people around them that Thea was not one of them. Now that they let an outsider win, where was their sense of honor and shame? Everyone thought, that's right, we have to surpass her. All of a sudden, even if there were people who wanted to be friendly with Thea, they did not dare to get close. If they did not get close to her, she was still one of them, but if they got close to her, they would be regarded as a traitor. They had indirectly isolated Thea. At this time, the dark and strong woman finally realized something. Her face became extremely ugly, and a few traces of red appeared on her dark face. Just when Thea was ready to see her vomit blood, the dark and strong woman clenched her teeth and held back the blood with her stone-like body. She looked at Thea, who was like a little white flower, with some fear. She regretted it at this time. If she had known that the opponent's strength was so terrifying, she would not have come to challenge her. Strength was the foundation of all fighting. In the past, the dark and strong woman relied on her brute strength to defeat countless opponents. Now, the tables had turned, and it was time for her to experience that helplessness. With a heavy heart, she did not greet anyone and left alone in disappointment. At this time, Thea was also ready to retreat and rest. The priests must have rushed back to think of countermeasures. Anyway, she had won the first game and had taken the initiative. Even if she lost the next game, she still had room to maneuver. Besides, she did not care too much about winning or losing. Seeing that she was leaving, Diana quickly pulled her back. "Are you interested in watching me and Antiope train?" Her little face was full of excitement as she spoke. This was probably the only time she felt comfortable on the island. Her little aunt was really good to her. Anyway, Thea had nothing to do, so she just thought of it as killing time. She nodded and followed Diana to a remote martial arts field. Chapter 195. Antiope had left the arena much earlier than them, and was now wielding her spear alone. She did not look surprised when she saw Thea following Diana. Diana must have told her beforehand, "Miss Thea, come and train with us." Antiope was very straightforward. Her words were resolute and impactful. "I'm just here to take a look." Thea looked at the dagger thrown to her in confusion. She wanted to refuse, but Antiope did not even give her a chance to speak. In fact, Thea did not dislike Antiope. Her straightforwardness reminded her of Lady Shiva in the past. Both of them were very pure people, much more to her liking than Diana's mother and those crafty priestesses. All right then, how do we start? Thea waved her sword. Their swords were shorter than the one-handed swords in the outside world, but they were heavier. Thea was now walking on a non-human path. If it were a normal person, they would definitely feel uncomfortable. Antiope, who was straightforward, made an unexpected suggestion. A 3-person free-for-all. Come on. Diana already looked like a future. She took a weapon from the rack. Of course, it was not a divine artifact. With a shield in her left hand and a sword in her right, she slowly approached the battle circle. Antiope continued to wield her spear. She stared at Thea and Diana's footsteps like an eagle, constantly paying attention to their footsteps and body movements. Seeing that they were very disciplined and had no intention of attacking first, Thea could only dance with her dagger. Then I'll go first. She slashed her dagger at Antiope's neck. You're very fast. Antiope used her spear to block the slash and praised casually. At the same time, she leaned to the side to avoid Diana, who was charging at her. Since it was a 3-person free-for-all, Thea could not just attack one person. After her dagger was blocked, she took the opportunity to stab at Diana, who was running towards her. The latter blocked her attack with her shield. Thea kicked at Diana's lower abdomen and twisted her head to avoid Antiope's spear. The 3 of them had their own strengths. Antiope was the oldest, and her martial arts were almost perfect. Diana completely relied on her innate combat instincts to make up for her lack of experience. Thea stood on the shoulders of the humans who had accumulated thousands of years of fighting experience. Antiope represented the depth of martial arts, Diana the purity of martial arts, and Thea represented the breadth of martial arts. The 3 of them fought for 10 minutes to understand each other's level. In fact, it was mainly Diana and her aunt who had deepened their impression of Thea. No matter how they changed their moves, they were easily defeated and counterattacked. If it was not for the 3-person free-for-all, either of them would have been defeated if they fought alone. The accumulation of thousands of years of human knowledge was not a joke. It was not that there were no people who could defeat the accumulation of knowledge of an entire society with their own strength, but they were definitely not the 2 of them. The situation gradually turned into a 2-on-1 between Diana and Antiope. This time, Thea was a little overwhelmed. On the one hand, she was not used to using her weapon. On the other hand, her strength was also suppressed by Diana, so she was a little frustrated. Antiope saw that she was in a disadvantageous situation and quickly stopped attacking. She stood alone and left the battlefield to them. With one less person, Thea's strength was immediately displayed. Many of her moves were bold and unrestrained, but they were extremely lethal. She slashed left and right, and at this time, she was still unbelievably immature Wonder Woman. She would occasionally counterattack, but most of the time, she was using her shield to block. Thea was sweating. This girl had the potential to be an MT. Her shield was really good. The parry, block, and dodge values were almost full. In a short period of time, she used 7 sets of swordsmanship, from Kashima Shindo Ryu to Iran's assassination technique. She used all the best moves from ancient times to modern times, but she still could not defeat Diana, who was stubbornly defending. Okay, I'm done. Thea panted and threw away the dagger that was chipped. If she continued fighting, she would enter a tiring phase. It was meaningless. Besides, she did not eat breakfast. Although she was not hungry, her stomach was empty and uncomfortable. Diana excitedly took the shield and looked at it. There were countless scratches on it. The best way to repair this shield was to melt it down. Your moves are really good. Did you come up with them yourself? How could I come up with them? they were accumulated over thousands of years by humans. No matter how thick-skinned Thea was, she could not say that she came up with them herself. Why is it not written in the books? Thea was a little embarrassed. How could these things be written in the books? It would destroy the stability of society. But this was not easy to explain. If she said so, Diana would definitely ask more questions. Then the three entered the daily teaching phase. It was mainly Antiope who taught Diana, and Thea watched from the side. But after watching for a while, she realized that something was wrong. The basic beliefs of the two were different. Antiope advocated offense, but Diana was good at defense. Maybe the idea of protecting in her heart was too deep, and there was always a sense of lack of aggressiveness. The two's teaching was stumbling. After a long morning, they finally said goodbye to Antiope, who was disappointed in them. Diana dragged Thea to eat. Ouch! Thea looked at the batter-like thing that was served and felt a little disgusted. You're eating this? Yeah, we've been eating this for so many years. It's full, nutritious, and tastes good. Thea took a spoon and stirred it twice. It was disgusting no matter how she looked at it. It was a little too much to call it pig's food, but dark cuisine was considered a delicacy compared to this. She whispered to Diana, "When we leave the island, I'll treat you to a good meal." Diana was shocked. She looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to her. She whispered, "My mother won't let me go out." "What are you afraid of?" "Forget it, you're right." Thea wanted to just kidnap her and take her out. She started the skateboard and flew out in a minute. But after thinking about it, Diana only had the silver bracelet of protection on her now. It was indeed a little dangerous. Her epic equipment had been stolen by her mother. Unless it was absolutely necessary, she would not give it to her. It was better to wait for Steve Trevor to bring the Germans to wipe them out. Thea swallowed her original plan. She lowered her head and drank 2 mouthfuls of the batter. Bah, it's too disgusting. No wonder Steve had to leave after 2 days. It was purely because of this disgusting food that he was forced to leave. Thea was so angry that she instantly opened the eye of Horus. She scanned the entire cafeteria and found that everyone was eating the same thing. No one was giving her a hard time. She could still hold on if the time was short. There was still nearly half a year left. Forget it, I'll just bite the bullet and eat. God's eye, you really are the son of God. Diana was closer this time. Unlike the mess in the square, she could immediately tell that this was definitely a sign of divine power scanning. She looked at Thea angrily. Why didn't you tell the truth? Was it because you were discriminated against that you didn't dare to say it? Chapter 196. What did you say? Thea's heart skipped a beat. She did it out of habit and did not notice that there was a living person beside her. Moreover, she was the kind of person who could sense the divine power. She regretted it. Who are your parents? Diana stared at Sia's face and asked seriously, "Look, I even told you that I'm the illegitimate child of Zeus, and you still refuse to tell me. You're not a good friend." However, Thea really could not say it. The biggest taboo in time travel was to say the names of one's parents. If she said Malcolm's name now, maybe one day in 70 years, Diana would see Old Ma on the road and think of Thea. She would go up to Old Ma and talk to him. With her personality, she would definitely do it. Old Ma was strongly stimulated. Perhaps he was originally going to find Moira to communicate with her, but because of the interference, he did not manage to do so. The little life that was born because of their communication that day was ruined, and Miss Sia might not be able to give birth. What the F*CK is this? Therefore, Thea only introduced her real name. Her real name did not matter. If there was a real name, it meant that the baby had been born. If there was no such name, it meant that the baby had not been born yet. Besides, there were many people with the same name in Europe and America. However, she could not say a word about her family. She waved her hand and said, "Diana, I really can't say. I'm sorry. Is it a god that has already fallen? Will it be sensed when the name is mentioned?" Diana touched her chin and forced herself to imagine. She seemed to realize that Thea had her reasons. She also got the answer to the great strength that Thea showed when she threw the javelin. It was most likely a divine power that she did not understand. Seeing that Thea finally stopped thinking about this problem, Thea finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Hey, do you have a kitchen here?" She was very doubtful about whether she could hold on until Steve Trevor came. She could endure it for a short time, but she still had nearly half a year to go. What if she starved to death before the old man came? Her idea was very simple. There were no guns or cannons. She could make her own. She could at least take some kitchen utensils and make it herself. Diana was stunned by her wild thoughts. On Paradise Island, fighting was an honor, and labor was a disgrace. It was very shameful to give up swords and pick up cooking utensils. Being discriminated against and being looked down upon was a common occurrence. Fortunately, Diana was an open-minded person. She knew that their food was not suited to the tastes of the outside world, so it was understandable that Thea wanted to make some for herself. He said that he would take note of this matter and report it to the queen at night. Thea gritted her teeth. Your queen even cares about cooking utensils? It was true that she was the village chief. In the afternoon, Diana continued her so-called training. Thea, on the other hand, was not in the mood. She rode her skateboard and prepared to look for some ingredients. When Diana dragged her tired body back to the house, she almost thought that she had entered the wrong house. There were all kinds of mushrooms, wood ears, and many other things that Diana could not name. Thea walked around the woods twice in the afternoon and found a lot of spices. However, many of them needed to be dried. There was a lot of fennel on this island. Thea picked half a bag of fennel sprouts. She also saw a few wild boars in the woods. They would be delicious if they were made into steamed buns. Of course, it was too late now. Thea saw Diana coming back and greeted her. "Hey." When Thea glanced at the spear in her hand, she suddenly thought of something. She grabbed the spear in her hand and said, "Wait for me." Then she got on the skateboard and flew towards the woods. Diana's face was full of confusion. Where did she go? She could not figure it out and could only stare blankly at the ingredients in the house. After a while, Thea waved at her from outside the door. "Come, come." She followed her to the door. "Hey." Diana was startled. She saw Thea coming back with the spear, piercing a wild boar. The wild boar was young and looked like it had just reached adulthood. The spear pierced through its indescribable part and came out of its mouth. "Are you going to sacrifice to the moon god?" Diana thought hard and felt that she had guessed the answer. "Sacrifice my ass." Thea rolled her eyes. "We will eat it ourselves." "Are you vegetarians?" Diana shook her head. They usually ate some meat during the sacrifice ceremony. For example, last night's ceremony to welcome Thea was to catch a pig. However, there were more than 1,000 people eating it, and each person's share was pitifully small. Now that she heard that the pig was for 2 people, although she felt a little sorry for the gods, she could not help but drool. She asked hesitantly, "Do you know how to handle it?" Thea definitely had not done this before, but now the situation was so serious that she could only roll up her sleeves and do it. Diana also helped her. Their martial arts skills and strength played an important role. They let out the blood, removed the hair, removed the internal organs, and the pig's brain. The whole pig was evenly grilled over the fire. After 20 minutes of grilling, when the surface of the pig's skin was a little brown, Thea felt that it was about time. She secretly used the Eye of Horus and found that the inside of the pig was a little red. Knowing that the fire was uneven, she carried the pig with one hand and grilled it for 5 minutes. At this time, the skin was already golden. Done. There was no hygienic condition to put out the fire. Fortunately, both of them had special physiques. Thea had eaten the fruit given by the swamp monster, so she was almost immune to poison. Diana was even more so. The drug that could poison her had not been developed yet. They found a clean robe and spread it on the ground. The whole pig was placed on it. Thea and Diana each took a short sword to cut the meat. Although there was no sweet and sour seasoning, the taste was very good after being hungry for a day. Thea felt that this pig was better than the Star City chef. Diana was a little excited. God took pity on her. She had lived for 5,000 years, and this was the first time that a whole pig fell in front of her for her to eat. She was a demigod. Staying on this island for so many years was not a small burden on her body. Plus, she ate batter every day. She might not even know what it was like to be full. Now, seeing Thea's mouth full of oil, Diana no longer hesitated in her heart. She took the short sword and cut a piece of golden pork. She grabbed it with one hand and put it into her mouth. While eating, she almost cried. It was too delicious. When they finished 1/3 of the pig, Diana's reason finally came back. We should pray to the moon goddess first. It doesn't feel good to eat it quietly. Thea wiped the oil stains on her mouth and looked at Diana, who was a little guilty. This girl was too stubborn. She even felt guilty eating a pig. She could only comfort her. Don't worry. She is the night-hunting goddess. Catching a pig in the middle of the night is definitely a tribute to her. She can't be more happy. Really? Diana was a little confused. This explanation was not wrong, but she still felt that something was wrong. Just when she was thinking, a slight but clear low laughter came from the forest. Ha! The sound was as clear as a silver bell, and it was particularly obvious in the dark night. Who is it? The two girls were very sensitive. They each took up their weapons and guarded against the direction where the enemy might appear. Chapter 197. There was silence all around. The two looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. The sound just now was definitely not an illusion. Thea opened the eye of Horus again and found that there were only the two of them and the half-eaten pig within a radius of 500 meters. It couldn't be the pig that made the laughter, right? It was a little scary. She poked the pig with her sword, but there was no reaction. Thea finally confirmed that there was nothing special about the pig except for its fresh and delicious meat. Who made the sound? The two thought for a while, but had no clue. Thea was not afraid. She had killed a god, so why would she be afraid of ghosts? The word fear was not in Diana's dictionary. The two continued to sit on the ground and eat calmly. When Hippolyte and her entourage brought the kitchen utensils and rice noodles to them, they saw this scene. The two sat on the ground, and a suspected pig-shaped creature had been eaten by them until only a little bit was left. However, the smell of meat drifted out for half a mile, and the two entourage of the queen couldn't help but swallow their saliva. The smell was refreshing enough, let alone eating it. "What are you doing?" the queen asked with a smile. The good girl Diana was embarrassed and couldn't answer. Thea, who could lie like drinking water, replied casually, "For the venerable moon goddess, we are offering a sacrifice." Thea could see that as long as it was against the temple, the queen would support it. If Thea wanted to burn the temple at this time, the queen might even keep watch for her. The queen glanced at the oil stains on their mouths indifferently and said lightly, "Gods should be respected in the heart, not on the surface." "Well, I have given you the things. You should finish the sacrifice early and have a good rest." After that, the queen asked the female warrior to put down the rice noodles and pots and turned away. "You see, your mother also thinks that we are offering a proper sacrifice. Now she is relieved. Thea said to Diana jokingly. Diana is completely confused, but what her mother just said is still in her ears. She has always believed in Hippolyte's words since she was a child. She looks down at the residue on the ground. Is this really the right way to sacrifice? Thea didn't think too much about it. She cleaned up the place, took Diana to take a shower, and went to bed early. The next day, early in the morning, Diana went to do her daily training and eat breakfast. Thea had completely given up on their meals, so she decided to do it herself. She jumped on the skateboard and prepared to go out to see if there were any other wild animals. Flying over the coast, he unexpectedly found a person training alone. It was none other than Thea's opponent, the tanned and strong woman. At this time, the tanned and strong woman was running with a giant log on her back. The top of her head was like a steamer with steam coming out of it. Her body was covered in sweat, and her mouth was constantly cheering for herself. What a fierce woman! Thea has never trained so hard even when she was at her most hardworking. No wonder her body was out of shape. This kind of training is like jumping 1,000 times. If she can't do it, she will run 10 kilometers with weights. If she can't run 10 kilometers, she will jump rope 800 times. She can't stand it. It's too much of a test of perseverance. Thea is impressed that someone else can do what she can't do. She didn't disturb her and flew away. At the same time, she was thinking, is the second round a test of endurance? Then I might as well just admit defeat. She didn't want to run around the island like the tanned and strong woman. She didn't know if she was lucky or not, but she was targeted by 2 eagles. Just as she was thinking about how to shoot the eagles, the 2 eagles rushed at her like crazy. She twisted their necks and carried them back to the place where she lived. Is it because of the fall of Horus that all the eagles are hostile to me? But that's a matter of the future. How did the eagles in 1918 know? She couldn't figure it out, so she didn't think about it anymore. She skinned the eagles and roasted them over the fire. She sprinkled some salt that the queen sent. The taste was not good, and the meat was a little dry. It was like heaven and earth compared to pork. After breakfast, Thea began to get busy for her future rations. Compared to Gideon's sci-fi spaceship, this is a primitive society. She wanted to eat buns, but she didn't know how to make dough. Unfortunately, there is no baidu in this era. Fortunately, the study Hippolyte prepared for Diana had a lot of miscellaneous books. She flipped through the books and roughly understood the process. When Diana rushed to her, Thea was kneading dough with her face full of flour. Ah, the second round now? What are you talking about? Come with me. It's impossible to leave quickly. Thea's face is full of flour. This is the competition for the name of the goddess of hunt, not the competition for the god of cookery. Diana could only watch her wash her face and change clothes. She looked around and saw that there were no mistakes. She took her to the dense forest on the east side of the island. What are we doing here? Thea was very familiar with this place. She got her wild boar here, and many of her mushrooms were also picked here, because they took some time to change clothes and wash their faces. When they arrived at the scene, all the people on the island were waiting for her. The 3 priests were very serious this time. No one pretended to be a grandson to her. They all stared at her fiercely. The leader of the priests cleared her throat. The goddess of hunt needs the best hunters. Your task this time is very simple. Enter the dense forest and win by the number of prey you catch. After that, she seemed to kindly remind Thea, Miss Thea, you can shoot arrows, right? This was the idea that they came up with after much thought. They wanted to play to their strengths and avoid their weaknesses. Don't you have great strength? Let's change the competition to skills. Although the dark and strong women were not good at archery, they had lived on the island for 5,000 years. These abilities were almost instinctive, so they felt that they had a good chance of winning. "Can you shoot arrows?" Diana also asked in a low voice. There was no other way. Thea had lost her bow and arrow. These days, she had been hunting with javelins. No one had seen her shoot arrows. "Okay, but you have to lend me your bow and arrow," Thea said modestly, but the villain in her heart was roaring. What a joke. We are going to become an archery family. There are black arrows, green arrows, and red arrows. How dare you ask me if I can shoot arrows? Her vague words coupled with the act of borrowing the bow and arrow made several priests show a knowing smile. This time, they could finally equalize a point. She could not shoot arrows, so naturally, she would not carry a bow and arrow at ordinary times, which was very reasonable. Worried, Diana handed her bow and arrow to her and told her to be careful. Thea took the bow and tried it. Unlike the modern composite bow she was used to, Diana and the others used a very old horn bow, which required high arm strength, but accuracy required more experience and eyesight. Fortunately, she was not short of arm strength or eyesight experience. She learned that there was no arrow limit, but there was a time limit until the sun went down. She took 2 pots of arrows and found a direction with the dark and strong woman. She took 3 female warriors who were said to be assisting, but actually monitoring into the dense forest. Chapter 198. Thea didn't talk to the people behind her, and they didn't have the intention to communicate with each other. Both sides treated each other as if they didn't exist. The 3 female warriors who assisted in the surveillance were watching her from a distance of more than 10 meters. This forest is really dense. Thea sighed after walking for more than 10 minutes. She didn't feel it when she was riding a skateboard. Walking in such deep and shallow places was really not enjoyable, affected by the forbidden area on the island. She couldn't use her earth-shattering magical power, but she still had her powerful psychic power. She condensed her psychic power into a line and explored in all directions. She received a lot of feedback. There were some small animals hidden in the bushes and piles of fallen leaves in the tree hole. She could totally learn from Alpha Centauri and not eat or drink all day long and kill 318 rabbits as trophies. But it would be a very ugly scene. The goddess of the hunt was hanging on to her last breath. If she saw how cruel she was to the small animals, would she die with a bang? The title of God Slayer was enough. Killing 2 gods wouldn't upgrade the title. Thea decided to follow the orthodox hunting method to avoid angering the goddess. She identified the direction and ran towards the place where she caught the wild boar yesterday. Wild boar had the word pig in its name, but it was actually quite fierce. No one in the Foot Basin country had ever seen a tiger or a lion. They thought that the bravest animal in the world was the wild boar, so they often crowned the warriors with the title of pig warrior. If you didn't know the truth, you would think that he was scolding you. In fact, it was really a compliment. Thea was looking for the wild boar at this time. She was in a hurry yesterday and didn't see it clearly. She only remembered that there were a few of them. It was completely worthy of the goddess to treat this thing as prey. She just wanted to show respect to the goddess. There was no need to hunt animals that sounded fierce. What's more, the prey was hers. She could eat it after the competition. Compared to the problem of how to eat a tiger or a lion, the wild boar was the most suitable. If the 2 of them couldn't eat it, it would be a favor to give it to the queen and Antiope. The 3 female warriors following Thea didn't know why she ignored the small animals nearby. Seeing her walking quickly through the forest, they didn't ask her anything and quickly followed her. Relying on her keen psychic power, Thea found the crime scene 15 minutes after entering the forest. She could vaguely see the bloodstains left behind when she committed the crime. At that time, she descended from the heavens and stabbed the wild boar with a javelin. After that, she cruelly dragged the wild boar away. The traces of the crime scene were too obvious. Where did those pigs go? Thea carefully looked at the traces on the ground. After looking at it for a long time, she could only helplessly express that the scene was too messy and full of pig footprints. Moreover, she did not have the talent of a scout. In her eyes, it was really difficult to find the whereabouts of the pigs in such a messy scene. Just as he was about to turn around and fight other animals, he found several large animals running towards him under the scan of his spiritual power. When she took a closer look, weren't they the pig sisters she had been searching for? It couldn't be helped. There were no males on Paradise Island. The one they ate yesterday was a little sow. Of course, the pig sisters were not here to reunite with her. Her brutal methods yesterday had caught them off guard. Today, a few wild boars were immersed in the grief of losing their loved ones. Unexpectedly, they saw her in her iconic red dress nearby and charged towards her without caring about their stamina. Stay away from them. Thea shouted at the few Amazons. As for whether they listened to her or not, it was none of her business. She looked at the surrounding terrain and found a boulder more than 3 meters above the ground. Using the huge grip of the mechanical arm, she climbed up quickly and drew her bow, ready to deal with the first wave of the wild boar's charge. When the first wild boar rushed out of the forest, it was greeted by an arrow as fast as lightning. Unfortunately, Sia had never used this kind of ancient bow before. She pulled the bowstring a little too hard, and the arrow that was originally aimed at the wild boar's eye brushed past its mouth, bringing a large piece of flesh and blood with it, and flew far away. She's really strong, and her archery skills are not bad. A few Amazons hid in the trees and watched from afar. Thea's arrow was almost drawn to the maximum tension of the bow. The angle was not very good, but it still left a bloody mark on the thick skin of the wild boar. It fully showed that the strength and speed of the arrow had reached the extreme of this kind of ancient bow. They thought it was good, but Thea felt that it was too embarrassing. She missed such a big target, partly because of the bow, and partly because she did not practice. For the second arrow, she did not blindly pursue speed. She spread out her spiritual power and corrected the arrow's trajectory. She pulled out another arrow, looked at the wild boar's bell-like eyes from afar, and released the bowstring. Bang! The wild boar was shot and fell on the spot. Blood flowed out of its eye sockets like it was worthless. Its limbs trembled violently. Although it was tenacious, it was only a matter of time before it died. Beautiful! A few female warriors could not understand Thea. Considering that she pretended to be weak when she threw the javelin, they could not figure out whether she was originally good at archery or had a breakthrough on the spot. From a pure warrior's point of view, her arrow was almost perfect. Even if Antiope, the best archer in the tribe, personally shot it, he would not be able to do it. There were a total of 3 wild boars that rushed out. This pig was obviously stronger than the other 2. Thea could not tell whether it was the mother or the sister pig. She only knew that the remaining 2 small ones seemed to taste better. Anyway, they could resurrect infinitely. She continued to aim at another wild boar without feeling guilty. This wild boar also fell under her sinful arrow without any suspense. The remaining piglets screamed and turned around to run. Still want to run? Thea jumped down from the boulder and chased after them like a galloping horse. In order to avoid capsizing, she always kept a distance of 100 meters and followed them at a leisurely pace. This pig was a little abnormal. Thea found that it was not running in a panic. It was running in an orderly and purposeful way. Is it trying to lure me into an ambush? Do wild boars have such intelligence? But thinking that they had lived for thousands of years, it seemed that anything abnormal could happen. Thea's expression gradually became serious. She slowed down a little and scanned the area with her psychic power to the maximum. If the god slayer was ambushed by a group of wild boars, then Horus's death would be too unjust. Her caution soon paid off. 600 meters to the east, there were several large animals. The little wild boar leading the way in front of her was also heading there. Hee. Thea smiled mysteriously, revealing 8 teeth. Her strengthened eyes had already seen a thick figure not far away. She wondered if there was an ice house on Paradise Island. It would be a pity to waste so much pork. Chapter 199. This time, there was no boulder for her to look down on, but she was already familiar with the performance of the hornbow. Instead of dodging immediately, she began to shoot arrows from a distance with all her might. She did not stop shooting arrows one after another. Every time, the bow was almost fully drawn. She did not use her eyes to aim, but used her mental power to accurately position the arrow. When several female Amazon warriors arrived at the scene, they saw such an inhuman scene. She shot a rain of arrows from a distance of 300 meters. Nearly 40 arrows were shot out by her in less than a minute. The hit rate was as high as 90%, or even a little higher. The 5 wild boars, including the first little pig, were all pierced with arrows. Some had 7 or 8 arrows, and some had 5 or 6 arrows. 2 of them were shot to death on the spot, and the remaining few were barely breathing. It was only a matter of time before they died. Thea waved at them from a distance, as if she was asking for draft paper in an exam. "Hey, I've run out of arrows. Can you give me some?" The few of them looked at each other in dismay. "You shot too fast." In the past, they pursued a fatal shot, and 2 quivers of arrows were more than enough. However, looking at Thea's impressive record, they could not say that her arrow rain was nonsense. The female warriors were very upright, and the level of their skills was obvious at a glance. At least they had lived for so many years and had never heard of anyone doing this. They still felt sincere admiration for others who could do what they could not do. They each had arrows with them, but there were not many. The 3 of them pooled together and gave her another quiver. Thea continued to shoot arrows at the wild boars that were not dead. According to the rules of the Amazons, the death of the prey was considered a result, and they could not let the female warriors help. They could only shoot arrows one by one into the fatal parts of the dying wild boars. Soon, the remaining few pigs were shot to death. It should be about time, right? Sia felt that 8 wild boars were enough. The dark and strong woman might fight for the last second, but she was not so eager to win. Going too far was as bad as falling short. For this meaningless battle, she was too lazy to play. She just wanted to find a way to go back to her original time and space. If she could not go home, not to mention the name of Artemis, even if you gave her the name of Zeus, it would be useless. Pack up and go out. She turned to the female warrior who was tying the dead boars with ropes. "Miss Thea, it's only been less than an hour? One of the female warriors tried to explain to her how sacred and noble it was, but she swallowed the words on the tip of her tongue when she saw her resolute expression. They sped up their movements. It was almost impossible for the 4 of them to transport 8 pigs out. Fortunately, they had Thea, who was suspected to be the reincarnation of Hercules, to help them. Using 2 strands of rope to tie the pigs together, they could still pull them out by force. The 3 of them each carried one, while Thea pulled the long string by herself. As they were slowly walking out, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her back. Someone launched a sneak attack. She immediately thought that the 3 female warriors were going to use underhanded means, but in the next moment, she judged that it was not the case. The danger came from the sky. He threw the rope away and rolled sideways on the spot, dodging the fierce attack from the sky. Thea was a little shaken when she saw who the enemy was. Damn, why is it another eagle? She couldn't tell what species the creature that had ambushed her was, but it wasn't small at all. It was dark gray all over, 1 meter long, with a wingspan of 3 meters. It had a sharp hook-shaped beak. After missing its attack, it returned to the sky and stared at Thea with its two fierce eyes. Thea felt that her reputation with the eagle tribe had solidified into hatred. Why was every eagle looking at her, as if she was an enemy? This was too illogical. Your boss can still live for more than 200 years. What method did you use to determine the murderer of the god slayer so early? The eagle could not hear her complaints. It turned around gracefully in the air and cried out loudly. Its hoarse and high-pitched voice spread far and wide. In less than 30 seconds, it was as if the forest had come alive, and birds of prey kept converging in this place. Thea kept shooting from below, but the eagle was extremely agile. It dodged left and right. Even with Thea's excellent archery skills, it took her a total of 5 arrows to shoot it down. It was too late. Thea looked at the black shadows that appeared in the distance and used the eye of Horus to observe them. There were a total of 17 birds of different sizes and colors. They were obviously not of the same species. She didn't know if these eagles were stimulated by her divine eyes, or because the first eagle had been shot down, but their speed suddenly increased by a large margin. How unlucky! Thea quickly put the quiver on her back. The arrows used to kill the wild boar had been retrieved. The Amazon's iron smelting skills were good, so the arrows could be used again. It was just that the tail feathers had dropped a lot, which affected the shooting accuracy. She activated her spiritual power and the Eye of Horus, and the mechanical arm in her left hand was almost at full power. She drew the bow fully and aimed at a bird of prey, with a white head and iron claws that was about to enter her shooting range. Huh, is this a bald eagle? Thea was a little dumbfounded. Is this an American bird? This is the national bird of the United States of America. It was full of free democratic will. You have a Mediterranean climate here. How did this American bird fly here? Thea did not have time to complain. She shot down the national bird that represented the spirit of freedom and democracy without any guilt. She then drew the bow again and aimed at the second bird. As she continued to draw her bow and arrow, she shot down 6 different birds of prey. The female warriors had already hidden themselves. Many of these birds had not been seen in the past 5,000 years. God knows which rock crevice they had jumped out from. Their mission was very simple, which was to continue to watch until one side was completely wiped out by the other. Thea had no time to calmly shoot arrows at this time. The speed of the eagles was too fast. Compared to them, the wild boars were as slow as turtles. She constantly used trees and other obstacles to avoid the enemy's attacks. One of them was too close to her, and she punched its head with her mechanical arm at full power. Damn it, if she had known that he would be so savage, she would have brought a knife. That punch was indeed very powerful, but as someone who was slightly obsessed with cleanliness, she still felt very uncomfortable. Half of her body was splashed with blood, and some white and yellow things were splashed on her body, making her feel extremely disgusted. But although she was disgusted, she had not reached the point where she could not walk after seeing blood. She constantly looked for the gap after the eagles attacked and before they took to the air. If they were far away, she would use the bow and arrow. If they were close, she would directly smash them. When the birds of prey reorganized in the air, they found that there were only 6 of them left. They looked at each other. 2 of them were slightly hesitant, while the other 4 were very smart and arranged a progressive charge. You and I, one after another. This tactic really gave Thea a headache, but she was not stupid. She used the gap between dodging to pick up a few goose egg-sized stones on the ground. Every time an eagle swooped down, she would throw the stones without looking. Regardless of whether she hit her target or not, she would quickly shift her position to avoid the eagle's next attack. The effectiveness of this tactic was astonishing. Very quickly, 2 more eagles were beaten until their bones were broken. They fell to the ground like rags and howled in pain, waiting for the god of death's favor. Chapter 200. Humph! Thea glanced at them. For left. Come on. Fight till dawn. Actually, she was just standing there and talking. The aggressive and murderous ones were already on the ground. The few in the sky didn't have the guts to do so. They were only able to survive until now because of their small size and fast speed. However, for some unknown reason, they didn't want to fly away. When they were high up in the sky, they would occasionally growl and stare fiercely at Thea on the ground. Damn it! At least Thea knew that she was still in the competition. Otherwise, she would have already taken out her skateboard to beat them up. Taking advantage of the fact that she couldn't get up, the feathered beasts continued to patrol in the sky and refused to disperse. "Lend me your bow." Thea shouted at the female warrior who was hiding in a tree. Although the female warrior didn't understand what she meant, she still threw her bow to Thea. Her bow was just an ordinary one. There was nothing special about it. She didn't feel guilty about throwing it. However, 2 seconds later, she couldn't stay calm anymore. She pointed at Thea and asked her companion. She can't be thinking of. Her companion was also a little dumbfounded. She's going to use 2 bows. She's too strong. Thea pulled both bows at the same time. The arrow was sandwiched between the 2 bows. The tail feathers were placed in a cross on the bowstring. She aimed at the lowest flying bee hawk. Swoosh! The initial speed of this arrow exceeded 300 meters per second, and in the blink of an eye, it stopped at a height of 1,000 meters. The huge kinetic energy pierced through the left wing of the wasp hawk, and it fell to the ground in a crooked manner. Thea didn't stop. She shot 2 more smaller sparrowhawks down. However, when she was about to shoot the last red-bellied sparrowhawk, she found that the latter had crazily increased its altitude. In the blink of an eye, it was hovering in the sky at an altitude of 5,000 meters. It looked at the ground with lingering fear. Thea was in a difficult situation. She didn't admit that she had OCD. She just felt that it wasn't perfect to have 1 less bird. However, 5,000 meters was obviously beyond the range of a bow. Besides, this wasn't a horizontal shot. She was shooting from the bottom up. The difficulty was another level. Help me come up with an idea on how to shoot it down. Thea could only ask for help from the 3 onlookers. She did not know that the 3 girls were dumbfounded at this moment. 17 of the 18 birds of different sizes had been shot to death by her, and she herself was not injured at all. Her archery skills crushed them without any suspense. Hearing her question, the few of them looked at each other and shook their heads with a bitter smile. "We're dealing with those on land." What they meant was that she had to think of a way to deal with those in the sky. Thea gave the eagles, who were still breathing, a final blow. Her method was extremely cruel, as she tried to provoke the one in the sky. However, the other party was completely indifferent. It neither fled nor swooped down. It just cruised in the sky. No matter how heinous Thea was, it was determined not to come down for revenge. She had met a coward. Thea's first plan had failed, so she came up with another plan, which was to pretend to retreat. She called the 3 female warriors to clean up the battlefield. The 3 girls were relieved and went down the tree. They could not defeat 18 birds of prey, but now there was only 1 left. What was there to be afraid of? They had trained for thousands of years. They would not lose in a one-on-one fight. Thea strung all the eagles into a string and dragged them side by side with the few wild boars. What she meant was, "Look at you guys. You're the overlords of the sky. Aren't you being treated the same as the wild boars? Let me ask you, are you angry? Sure enough, the red-bellied eagle in the sky had suffered a great psychological trauma. Its companions were all killed, and it was the only one who survived. Now that the enemy had humiliated the body of a brave warrior, it could not stand it anymore. Feeling the eagle's agitation, Thea added fuel to the fire and brazenly glanced at it with the eye of Horus. A low cry was heard, and the sound quickly spread from the sky to the ground. The red-bellied eagle that was controlled by anger completely gave up on the idea of flying again. It did not reserve any energy and increased its speed to the maximum. It only wanted to pierce a hole in this blasphemous creature. It did not care whether it would die or not. Come on. In the face of the red-bellied eagle's desperate charge, Thea finally found the feeling of blood boiling. This opponent was worthy of respect. She focused her mind and aimed at the red-bellied eagle that was rapidly approaching her. The distance between the two sides was getting closer and closer. Thea could see every feather on the eagle's body, but she did not rush to release the arrow. This state of not shooting was a burden to her, and it would also interfere with the opponent. She was waiting for the best time to shoot. Sure enough, her arrow-like gaze was sensed by the sensitive red-bellied eagle. Its original desperate charge was slightly changed. Just when it was thinking about whether to maintain the original speed or change the angle, Thea took advantage of its hesitation and instantly released the bowstring. An ordinary-looking arrow gradually grew larger in the red-bellied eagle's eyes and finally pierced through it. Ah! Thea raised the bow and shouted to the sky. The 3 female warriors were also encouraged by her success. They pulled out their swords at the same time and roared to the sky. After shouting a few more times, Thea felt much better. Ever since she met the Time Wanderer on Purgatory Island, her journey had not been smooth. Now, she had fallen to such a desolate island, and it was impossible for her to return home. These heavy facts had been pressing down on her not-so-broad shoulders. The exhilarating slaughter today had finally allowed her to vent most of the frustrations in her heart. At the same time, she had also gotten rid of the influence on her personality after fusing with the unicorn. She was just herself. She liked battles that made one's blood boil. She was not some compassionate Cirthus. She had no interest in being a righteous superhero. She just wanted to be herself. After washing away the lead, Thea felt that her entire soul had become abnormally clean. Although her strength did not improve at all, she felt very comfortable and happy. She sighed in her heart. I really don't have the fate of a protagonist. Every time the protagonists had an epiphany, they would level up by leaps and bounds. I, on the other hand, have not improved at all. Moreover, the protagonists had all encountered great disasters. If it was light, they would be forced to cultivate again. If it was serious, their families would be wiped out. What about me? I only killed a few wild boars and birds, and I had an epiphany. Just thinking about it made me feel low. She shouted to the female warriors, happily, "Put them on the ground. Let's continue hunting." Although the female warriors did not know why she suddenly became so energetic, they still followed her happily. The scene was full of honor. They felt that they would see an outsider crowned with the divine name of Artemis with their own eyes. This was an honor for Thea, and it was also a wonderful thing for them to praise for a long time. Next, the animals living in the dense jungle found that their peaceful lives were broken. Many of the large animals that looked delicious were unlucky. This island was a product of unscientific research, and the animals in the jungle fully demonstrated this point. Many animals living in the tropical, temperate, and even cold zones were discovered by Thea's pervasive psychic power, and then regretfully fell under her sharp arrows. Chapter 201. There's a snake on the tree. I heard that it's very nutritious. Shoot it and take it. The squirrel over there looks quite cute. Its big tail feels nice to touch, and it can even blink. Forget it, I'll spare its life." Along the way, Sia judged whether the other party belonged to the hunting category based on her own preferences. She prioritized killing those whose meat was tender and nutritious. As for the ones that tried to act cute, they were scared away by Thea's threatening gestures. The ones with thick skin and thick meat were determined by the situation. When she shot another fox that was constantly patrolling around her prey, the female warrior looked at the sky and told her that the time was almost up. It was time to return. Thea looked up at the sun through the gaps between the trees. She could not see anything different. How did these people determine the time? Puzzled, she began to clean up the scene. There were too many prey, and they did not have enough manpower. They could only move the prey bit by bit. When they were about a mile away from the exit, they heard a very loud whistle from outside the forest. It's a whistling arrow. The other side is out of the dense forest. Let's speed up. One of the female warriors looked at the small mountain of prey and said with a little distress. Thea also wanted to speed up. At this time, the dense forest was showing the prologue of evening. From time to time, insects and flies were attracted by the thick smell of blood. They rushed forward one after another to get a taste of the blood. Thea was also suffering because of the blood stains on her body. She was harassed by the buzzing insects because of the blood stains. "Can we ask a few more people to come in and help?" Thea killed another mosquito that was circling around her and asked for the others' opinion. The few of them discussed in low voices. In the past, they hunted to show off their bravery. Their prey was always the kind of wild animals in the forest that could be carried away by 2 or 3 people. It was the first time that they encountered such a large-scale massacre, like Thea. In the end, they decided that 2 of them would stay here and guard while the other one would go out and call for reinforcements. Diana's helpers came quickly. When she saw the animals piled up like a mountain on the ground, she instantly understood what Thea was thinking. They all look like delicious food. She thought to herself. The saying of strength in numbers was always true, not to mention that there was also Diana and Sia, 2 cheaters whose strength was seriously over the top. More than a dozen people carried the prey out of the dense forest in a flurry. At this time, many people outside the forest were pointing at the tanned woman. Their expressions were filled with admiration and envy. The tanned woman did not look good. Half of her body was covered in blood, and the other half was covered in mud. She looked like she had just finished wrestling. She looked like she was full of mud. However, she looked quite energetic. She sat on her prey casually. The tanned woman was doing the traditional hunting method of the Amazon tribe. She killed a bear that looked like it weighed more than 700 pounds. Of course, this black and majestic bear was not a Cumaman that lived by acting cute. It was a ferocious-looking American bear. The black bear's face, neck, and stomach were full of scars. It was obvious that the fight between the 2 was extremely fierce. In the end, the tanned woman emerged victorious. As if to show off her personal strength, her shoulder was scratched by the bear's claws, leaving 3 bloody wounds that were so deep that her bones could be seen. Her metal half-body armor was scratched to pieces. The wounds were urgently treated by the tanned woman. Unknown herbs were smeared on them, but they were not bandaged. From time to time, some blood could be seen oozing out. She came out nearly half an hour earlier than Thea. She nervously watched the few crossings that her opponent might take. When she saw a female warrior carrying a wild boar out, she heaved a sigh of relief. In order to get a good result this time, she had to give it her all. Otherwise, who would be so free to compete with a bear? But her good mood did not last long. Another female warrior came out with a bunch of eagles. Huh, why are there so many different species of eagles in this forest? The tanned woman's heart was pounding. Anyone with eyes could see that these eagles were shot to death. This was very much in line with Artemis' original purpose, which was to hunt. The tanned woman remembered that she fought with a black bear and almost killed it with her fists in the end. This had nothing to do with hunting. Would this give the opponent an excuse to attack him? He began to ponder in his heart. One moment, the priests announced her victory. Her opponent wantonly attacked her with the teachings of the religion. She won in the eyes of her people. The next moment, everyone agreed that she had lost and left Paradise Island to wait for death in the outside world. All kinds of complicated thoughts rushed into her mind. The black bear's corpse no longer felt comfortable sitting up. She could not help but stare at the direction of the exit, waiting for her opponent to appear. The next scene confirmed the tanned woman's guess. Her opponent really hunted a lot of animals. She saw a wild boar, an eagle, a fox, a snake, and a silver wolf with very smooth fur. Just when she was concentrating on every figure that came out of the forest, looking for her opponent, she saw Thea walking briskly. She was dragging a blueberry tree with her left hand and 2 scoops of chickens with her right hand. The tanned woman almost vomited blood. Why did you come out with fruits? Shouldn't you be carrying a tiger or a leopard? And what the hell are these 2 chickens? Could it be that they are not scoops of chickens? Was this an indescribable creature that had turned into a spirit in the legends? When she stared at Thea, Thea also saw her and the black bear she was sitting on. Even Thea had to admit that the tanned woman did have some skills. It was a pity that she lost to her in the javelin throw. Her personal strength was quite good. Thea would have a hard time fighting this bear. This outsider hunted a lot of animals. Her archery must be superb. I think Artemis's bravery is worthy of praise. Hunting animals on a large scale is not in line with our traditions. Nonsense! This is the authentic teachings of the goddess of the hunt. Look at those wounds. They are all caused by arrows. If you ask me, the outsider will definitely win this match. The chatter around them reached the ears of the few parties involved, and the tanned woman's face became more and more ashen. She could roughly tell from the voices in the crowd that half of them supported her, and half of them supported her opponent, which meant that her opponent had already won the support of half of the people. Sia had only been here for a few days. What about her? She had lived on the island for 5,000 years. The base of the people was different, yet she could still win the support of half of the people. This was a serious problem. If the tanned woman with brawn could think of this problem, the 3 cunning priestesses could also think of it. The 3 priestesses were a little annoyed when they saw this result. They understood the teachings of the goddess of the hunt. If the goddess of the hunt was still alive, Thea would definitely be the one to please her. After all, killing a bear with a big stick was not the graceful image of the goddess of the hunt. Although Thea had a lot of blood on her, it was obviously the blood of prey. She looked much better than the tanned woman, who looked like she was fished out of the mud. Chapter 202. But they couldn't say that, and directly declared Thea the winner. The black woman was completely finished, and there was no need to compete in the 3rd round. The 3 racked their brains and began to make up excuses. Say that she killed too much and was disqualified. Are you retarded? We don't have a ban on killing. Then say that she used more arrows than the stipulated number. Do we have a stipulated number of arrows? The 3 of them racked their brains, but they couldn't find any flaws in the doctrines. Moreover, they were sloppy. Many of the word-picking entries were not sure if it was the goddess or the 3 of them who said it. Many of the female warriors at the scene used to be priests, but they were transformed into warriors by Hippolyte. Their familiarity with the doctrines was not worse than the three of them. If they were caught talking nonsense, they wouldn't even be able to keep their current jobs, let alone fighting for power. The three of them had lived comfortably for 5,000 years and didn't want to be warriors. In the end, the oldest priest made up her mind and whispered a few words in the ear of the priest who deducted Thea's breakfast. The more she listened, the more dumbfounded she was. Finally, she asked with an ugly face, "Will it work?" After getting a positive answer, she took a deep breath and walked to the front of the crowd as if she was carrying a heavy burden. She cleared her throat and announced loudly, "The Oracle of Artemis has been issued. The goddess wants to see a more exciting game. This game will be considered a draw." This was the solution they thought of. Anyway, the goddess didn't know. The right to speak was in their hands. If we say there is, there is. Didn't you receive it? This means that you are not devout enough. Sure enough, she didn't mention who won or lost, and pushed the blame to the goddess regardless of the facts. The crowd below was instantly boiling. Fortunately, they were all civilized people, and no one threw stones to protest against her oracle. This made the priest who announced this shocking news secretly relieved. No one protested, but the discussion was inevitable. She didn't have the courage to shout at them, to shut up. She could only listen obediently. "Oracle, did you see it? Why didn't I see it? Their faces are too ugly. This is all to fight for power with the respected queen. Sigh. They should at least affirm Artemis's achievements. The Outlanders' results are also good. Are the two of them just ignored?" Paradise Island still had a strong democratic atmosphere, and the female warriors were not all muscleheads. After living for so many years, they could still judge the basic right and wrong. Whether it was those who supported Thea or Artemis, they all expressed dissatisfaction with the way they pushed the blame to the gods. As the leader of the camp, Hippolyte naturally heard the discussion of the people. She covered her mouth and pretended to be shocked by the news. In fact, she was laughing in her heart. Great joy appeared on the corner of her mouth, but she forcibly covered it and pretended to be surprised. Diana, who had a fiery temper, was furious. On one hand, she felt that it was unfair for her friend. On the other hand, she felt that the three of them were blasphemous. As a demigod, she had the right to say whether or not there was a miracle here. However, other than herself and Thea, there was not even a shadow of a supernatural being here. The actions of these people were undoubtedly blasphemous. It was simply unforgivable. Thea did not know why she was suddenly so angry. She thought that she wanted to stand up for her, and she was touched. She pulled her back, fearing that she would charge up and kill the three old things. The bad priestess and the others' discussion calmed down a little. She asked Hippolyte very respectfully, "Does the queen have any opinion?" Of course, the queen had no opinion. If this kind of thing happened twice more, your reputation would be completely gone. Didn't you see that the tanned woman was dissatisfied? She thought that she was treated unfairly and that it affected her honor. Perhaps if it happened again, Hippolyte would be able to truly rule Paradise Island. She nodded solemnly, indicating that she had nothing to say. Since they said that it was an oracle, then it was an oracle this time. Just as she was about to announce the end of the meeting, Thea finally spoke up. "Wait, I have a question." It was normal for her to have questions. It would be strange if she did not have questions. At least, the bad priestess thought that if she was the one who was treated unfairly, she would have already fought with her. In fact, she was not the only one. The other female warriors were also waiting for her to speak up. Some of them were even secretly cheering her on. "Kill these old bastards. If you dare to start a fight, I'll kick your ass." Many of them thought, "You said that there was an oracle just now?" Thea asked loudly. The bad priestess was not shameless enough to eat her words on the spot. She nodded. That's right. The oracle wants to see a more exciting match. She was right. That was what she said just now. The bad priestess could only continue to nod. Thea smiled innocently. Since we have attracted the attention of the gods, we can't let them wait any longer. I suggest that we start the third round immediately. Wow. Suddenly, there were a lot of unintelligible sounds in the hall. It seems to make a lot of sense. There's nothing wrong with that. We should start the match immediately. Thea's counterattack broke the three's plan. The moment they heard her words, they felt a dull buzzing sound in their heads. They quickly exchanged a few glances. Damn it! How could they communicate with glances? No longer caring about the criticism, the three gathered together again and whispered. What should they do? This question flashed in the eyes of all three of them. Sia's question happened to be stuck in their so-called oracle. She was absolutely right. The gods were paying attention to us. Since we were so pious, we definitely couldn't let the gods wait. In that case, let's hurry to the next round. They could not say that the gods left behind an oracle and run away, now that the gods were not at home. That was too ridiculous. They could not even fool the simple people on their island, let alone the knowledgeable outsiders. Their own gods were hanging on by a thread, even when they were full of divine power. The Greek gods were famous for playing around and not doing anything serious. They were far from being busy. It was pure nonsense to say that the gods were very busy. As for denying the oracle, it was even more impossible. Even if they wanted to take back what they had said, they could not just take it back 2 minutes after saying it. The three old faces had not been trained to the point of being invulnerable. They still had some sense of shame. After careful consideration, they finally decided to do as she said. Continue the match. As for what to compete in, the three of them were a little confused. They competed in strength and skills. Was there any other specialty on Paradise Island that they could compete in? In a hurry, the three of them saw more and more female warriors pointing at the three of them. Needless to say, they were definitely not praising the three of them for their piety and honesty, especially the distrust in Artemis's eyes, which hurt the three of them. Damn it, we are wasting our brain cells for you. Chapter 203. If the black and strong woman looked at them like this in the past, they would have already given up. Who do you think you are? But now the situation is different. No matter what the original purpose is, they must pull the black and strong woman. They have been forced into a corner. If they want to live peacefully, they have to fight. However, even if he was capable of making bold claims, it would be too difficult for him to actually execute them. The black and strong woman is a very typical Amazon female warrior. She can do nothing but fight and kill. Now, the strength and skills are better. Do they want the two to fight? The three shook their heads at the same time. Thea's pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger left a deep impression on the three of them. Is it possible that she is a fighting master? The leader of the old priest thought hard. When she saw the puzzled eyes of the female warriors around her, she thought of a good way and whispered to the two of them. In fact, there is no need to discuss it all. She has a way. The other two are almost crazy by the situation in the field. Every second here, their popularity will drop by a lot. It is definitely better to have a way than to have no way. This time, the bad priest will not read the oracle. So many people at the scene are watching. The idea discussed by the three of them is immediately packaged as oracle. Do you think these more than 1,000 people are fools? The head of the old priest can only go out in person. She is not so courageous to disguise herself as an oracle under the eyes of the public. She is afraid that she will be stoned to death by the angry female warriors. Finally, she has a bit of quick-wittedness and changed their ideas to disguise themselves. Through our interpretation of the oracle, we think the gods are going to personally assess the third game. Next, we will go to the temple for the final game. It has to be said that her words are quite clever. Out of the fear of the gods, the female warriors who were originally excited were suppressed. Is there really an oracle? Are they not lying? Let's look at the situation again. The female warriors were instantly shocked by her actions. Not to mention them, even Thea and Diana were surprised. What happened? Did the oracle really come? The two looked at each other and were a little confused. Hippolyte, who had been chatting with them for more than 5,000 years, was not so easy to fool. She pretended to be very excited and asked in the tone of a crazy fan, "What do the gods say? Can I go and listen to it myself?" In any case, she was the queen, and she and Zeus still had several legs of friendship. The priests couldn't refuse at all, not to mention them. Even if Artemis came down in person, in terms of identity, Hippolyte was not afraid of her. Now she just asked to watch, and no one dared to refuse. The old priest acquiesced to Hippolyte's proposal and replied, "The oracle is very obscure. Let's not let the gods wait for a long time. Let's go." For a moment, a big question mark appeared in the minds of those who understood. What were they planning? Thea was naturally a smart person. She also didn't understand what these old guys were trying to sell, but looking at the tanned woman's puzzled face, it was clear that she didn't know what they were trying to compete in. It was still fair. Thea just wanted to end this farce as soon as possible. If you want to fight for power with Hippolyte, then go ahead. Why do you have to drag me into this? I have to go back and knead the dough. Knowing that Diana would also go, she was even more relieved. These three old guys can't summon Ares, right? There was nothing to be afraid of, so she calmly followed the three people. As she walked, she took out a handful of blueberries from her bag and handed them to Diana. The two followed the large group slowly, as if they were on an outing. Diana, who had been with her for 2 days, was obviously thick-skinned. She took the food and ate without scruples. She didn't know if it was because she was influenced by the company she kept. Hippolyte and Antiope, who had been paying attention to them, were thoughtful. As for what they were thinking, only they knew. From the dense forest to the temple in the center of the island, the distance was not close. Thea saw that everyone was walking solemnly and didn't dare to mention riding a horse. On the way, she found an apple tree. Without saying a word, she broke the branches with a punch and picked up 7 or 8 apples to eat on the road. Several camp leaders pretended not to see it for their own purposes. Many female warriors saw this scene, but most of them chose to ignore it. A few thought that she was showing off her personal bravery and cheered loudly for her. This made Sia a little embarrassed. Since everyone was cheering for her, it would be inappropriate for her to eat alone. So, in the spirit of sharing, she picked a few apples and threw them to the loudest people, which led to another round of cheers. The few people who caught her apples also slowed down and walked side by side with her. Several people began to discuss how Thea killed the huge prey. Thea made a cameo appearance on the scene and shot an eagle that was pulled in front of her by Horus. This ignited the emotions of the female warriors. Many female warriors slowed down and walked into the group to observe her amazing archery skills. Thea didn't refuse any of them and shot 2 sparrowhawks in front of everyone. The cheers were earth-shattering, and even Diana was a little eager to try. They were so happy as if they were celebrating a festival, but the faces of the priests were pale. As the general of Paradise Island, Antiope couldn't help but turn around and compete with Thea in archery after seeing her kill another gray eagle. It had to be said that Antiope's archery skills were better than the spear. Thea and her were evenly matched. The two of them went from shooting dead animals to shooting living animals, and finally, they shot 3 arrows at the same time. It was like an archery competition, showing off all kinds of archery skills. Isn't it the age of gunpowder outside? Why do you want to specialize in archery? Antiope was very happy now. The female warriors of Paradise Island didn't dislike archery, but they advocated hot-blooded battles with swords and axes. They weren't very keen on long-range attacks. Now that they met Thea, who came from an archery family, they naturally felt unexpectedly close to her. It was a kind of respect that both sides were on the same level. Of course, Thea couldn't say that her father and brother were all archers, and she couldn't reveal too many details about the future. She could only vaguely explain, "Archery can give me courage to protect my city from the invasion of bad people. Gunpowder can't. Gunpowder can only further increase the killing." Diana, listen, Thea's philosophy is different from yours, but it's also noble. This is the concept of protection that I mentioned to you before. It's not the only concept you should. Antiope was deeply impressed after listening to her half-truths. Thinking of the naughty child that she taught, she turned around and began to discuss with Diana whether there was any room for improvement in her life principles. Chapter 204. Thea did not have many beliefs for her to think about. She just wanted her family to survive in the future. Of course, it would be better if they could live comfortably. Antiope went to teach the naughty children. Thea was surrounded by a group of female warriors who had lived for 5,000 years, but were still very innocent. Archery required talent and some tricks, so she could not teach them. However, she could teach them the thousands of years of fighting experience she brought from the outside world. She found a few moves that were very similar to their original style and taught them. The female warriors did not care that Thea was much younger than them. They all happily learned the moves. By the time they reached the entrance of the temple, there were already hundreds of people gathered around Thea. Diana could not stand her aunt's nagging. In the name of proving her beliefs, she was actually annoyed by her aunt's nagging. She dragged Thea to play another round. The two of them were not serious. They were purely playing around. They walked for a few miles and attracted a lot of attention. In front of them, there were constantly people who deliberately fell behind to watch from a close distance. The whole group walked in a very strange way. A large group of people in front of them walked in an orderly manner, but there were people who looked back from time to time. The large group of people behind them was much more lively. It was as if they were celebrating a festival. There were endless cheers and shouts, mixed with the sound of weapons clashing. A group of female warriors who regarded fighting as their lives cheered even more. When the group in front of them stopped, they realized that they were at the entrance of the temple. We're here. Time flies. Oh no, Miss Thea has used up a lot of energy. Will this be bad for the competition later? No wonder the old guys didn't stop them. They're so cunning. After playing around for a while, many people had a better impression of Thea. They were not completely loyal to her, but at least they were friendly. Many people realized that they should have rested for the whole journey, but Thea obviously did not stop. Diana was also a little regretful. All the female warriors on this island were adults from the moment they had consciousness. She was the only one who had gradually grown up from childhood. She, who had no playmates, had a lot of fun playing with Thea along the way. Now that she realized that she seemed to have been a burden, she felt extremely regretful. Thea patted her on the shoulder, indicating that she was fine. With this kind of low-intensity physical exhaustion, she could definitely last for 3 days. Diana didn't relax because of her comfort, but focused on listening to the priest's explanation of the third game. The space inside the temple is limited. The contestants can enter. Oh, Her Majesty can also come and watch. The old priest said calmly. The Amazons didn't have any objections. The temple area was originally large enough, but in the past 5,000 years, Hippolyte had used various excuses to occupy it. Today, she built 2 houses to improve the accommodation of the female warriors, and tomorrow she took away a large piece of land. Now, the temple area had shrunk sharply. It could barely accommodate more than 200 people at the same time. The 3 priests didn't wait for them to respond. They led the way in, followed by the queen, Antiope, and the strong black woman. Thea sighed and followed them. Diana calmly accompanied her. She was blessed by the gods, and no one could stop her. The female warriors pushed out 100 people and finally entered the temple. The era of the gods is over. This was the first sentence that came to Thea's mind when she entered the temple. The statues of the 12 main gods, which should have been full of majesty and solemnity, were now crowded side by side. The whole space seemed cramped and small. Although the statues of the gods were full of power and beauty, Thea didn't feel a trace of divine power from them. There was only heavy lethargy and defeat. Would there be any hidden equipment here? The protagonist's golden finger was usually hidden in the statues. Thea secretly scanned the place with the eye of Horus. When she saw something, she almost laughed out loud. She saw traces of human living in the backyard of the temple. Needless to say, this was where the priests usually lived and ate. This was normal. The priests were also human, and they needed to eat and sleep. It was not surprising. However, Thea saw a row of neatly dried sweet potatoes in their house. This almost made her laugh. It turns out that I'm not the only one who thinks the food is bad. They are also secretly improving their food. Hey, don't use your divine power. Diana elbowed her. Sorry. Thea quickly apologized in a low voice. Using the divine power of the gods in the temple, are you sure you are not here to cause trouble? Besides, these Greek gods were not dead. They were just too injured to move. After apologizing, she couldn't help but whisper into Diana's ear and share her discovery with her. After listening to her story, Diana's expression was extremely strange. Her serious facial muscles were a little twisted. She gave Thea a strange look and covered her mouth hard. She lowered her head and did not dare to look at the 3 old priests on the stage. She was afraid that if she really laughed out loud, it would not end well. The old priest's footsteps did not stay in the temple for too long. Instead, he went to the side door. Isn't the competition in the temple? Where are we going? Thea whispered to Diana. It seems to be the way to the tower. Tower? Thea saw that Diana did not say much. She could only put down the doubts in her heart and follow the others. Clang! The guards in front of the tower pushed open the thick wooden door. The old priest did not care about the dust falling from above and took the lead to walk in. Hiss! Entering the tower, Thea saw the sword in the middle of the room at first glance. It was a typical Greek-style casting model. The sword was 60 centimeters long, and the hilt had a flame-shaped handguard holding the blade tightly. The whole sword was golden. This was the so-called Godslayer with 999 attack power that Hippolyte tricked Diana into believing. However, the divine power of this tower was too concentrated. Thea could feel that some of the gods will still remain here. She did not dare to rashly observe with her divine eyes. She just felt that the divine power on the sword was a little too gorgeous. Even her eye of Horus could be instantly attracted. This was very strange. In the original plot, it was easily shattered by Ares. Did this mean that this was a fake sword? The real sword was stolen by Hippolyte. Thea could only say that this way of caring for her children was really unique. As the priest moved forward, Thea saw a lot of divine equipment. There was the shield of the future Diana, the lasso of truth, and many other equipment that she could not name. What a pity! What a pity! If only they could give me all of them. The further she went, the stronger the feeling of being watched by the gods. Even Horus could borrow divine power from his father. That was only a second-tier god. They were a lot of main gods. Plus, there was the unfathomable god King Zeus. Even if Superman were to fly over in his dark form, he would not be able to snatch them. Lady Thea could only be an honest spectator. Chapter 205. Along the way, Sia's heart was itching. In the end, she simply stopped looking at them and followed them around in circles with her head lowered. From the outside, the tower covered an area of about 100 square meters, but the internal space was extremely unscientific. She felt that there was no end to it. Was this space magic? Thea kept looking at the surrounding environment, but unfortunately, she could not see anything. When several people climbed over a mountain in the tower, crossed two small rivers, and stopped, they had come to a shallow beach covered with grass. There were some low trees around. The whole environment layout was not natural, but it was obvious that it took a lot of effort. A silver-white elk was lying alone on the shore. When it heard the footsteps of several people, it did not look up, but its ears trembled slightly. It seemed to be trying to identify the identity of the people. This is the Oracle of Artemis. It has accompanied the goddess of the moon for countless years. Your third test is to get its approval. Who will go first? The old priest introduced it with some pride. In fact, it was mainly for Thea. The Amazons basically knew the identity of this elk. Several former priests who had turned into warriors had fed it before. The only one who was really unfamiliar with it was Thea. Although the dark and strong woman was not familiar with the elk, she had been around for so many years and had dealt with the elk under the name of Artemis. She should be familiar with it, right? Compared to Thea, this was the first time she had seen it. She had a great advantage. The old priest wants to praise his own intelligence and wisdom. I am so witty. I don't compete with you in strength or skills. It is useless even if you have a great force value. We are more familiar with the place and have a wide network. She couldn't hide her thoughts from everyone, and she didn't want to hide it. So what if they guessed it or not? As long as the dark and strong woman won this game, the results of the two would be a tie. The overall score would still be a tie. The matter would be over with a few verbal commendations. As for finding trouble with Hippolyte, they could do it next time. Anyway, there was plenty of time. You are too much. You're blatantly bullying Thea. The first one to complain was Diana. She was blessed by Athena's wisdom. Although she was a little immature when it came to dealing with people, she was not a fool. The priest's trick was too obvious. It would be abnormal if he couldn't tell. Several female warriors also protested. It was not because they were close friends with Thea, but because they felt that this so-called competition was too unfair. Even the tan woman's face was filled with shame. After winning so shamelessly, did she still have the courage to face anyone? The old priest really practiced a golden face mask, iron face skin, divine skill. You can say whatever you want. I am like this. If you don't agree, come and bite me. Smiling, he turned to Hippolyte and asked, Your Majesty, do you have any objections? Hippolyte carefully observed the mood of the people at the scene. The majority of people were dissatisfied, but there were a few people who just showed shame. If she suddenly attacked, it was still a question whether these people would support her. Her mentality was similar to that of the old priest. It was still a long time, and the fight needed to be controlled within a certain range. She made up her mind and acquiesced in this game. After the game, she would compensate Thea alone. There were a lot of good things in her private collection. Zeus was good to her as a mistress. The king of gods gave her good things in the past. Artifacts were rare in the outside world, but in the eyes of Hippolyte, they were just ordinary things. But acquiescence was acquiescence. It was impossible for her to endorse a few priests. She looked at the distant mountains as if she didn't hear anything and remained silent. The old priest guessed her thoughts and sneered. He turned back and said, "The oracle is very tired. Who will go first?" The black woman did not dare to look at Thea's eyes. She lowered her head and said in a muffled voice, "I will go first." She wanted to demonstrate to Thea, or she wanted to end this farce that violated her warrior's sense of honor as soon as possible. She lightened her footsteps and walked around to the side of the shallows. She picked a few branches with tender leaves and broke them off. She walked slowly to the elk and made a sound that Thea thought was very kind, but it sounded like she was feeding a pig. "Lulu, come and eat, Lulu." It could be seen that this was not the first time for the black woman to do this. Her movements were skillful and natural. The elk also gave her face. He raised his head slightly and took a few bites of the tender leaves that were sent to his mouth. After that, he nodded gently. His action made the black woman breathe a sigh of relief. In her heart, she was glad, but more than that, she was ashamed. She did not return to the crowd and sat alone on the grass without a word. "Miss Thea, it's your turn. Come on," the old priest said with a smile. Thea angrily gave her a middle finger. Although the old priest did not understand the meaning of this gesture, he knew that it was not a compliment. He smiled and waited for Thea to make a fool of herself. "Should I pick some leaves to feed it?" When Thea walked closer, she found that the elk was really very old. Compared to the animals on the island that were constantly reborn, it did not enjoy the eternal magic of Paradise Island. It seemed that its life was consumed every minute and every second. Time had left many traces on its body. Its eyes that should have been clear and transparent were now full of turbidity. It could not see. The horns that had defeated countless powerful enemies were still as sharp as blades. However, the goddess's slumber had also taken away its fighting spirit. The invasion of time had made it completely lose the courage it once had. Its soul was too tired. It was consuming its own lifespan. It was begging for death. These thoughts came to Thea's mind, but she could understand the bitterness of the elk. It had amazing fighting power, but everything was meaningless. It could only wait here alone for the last moment of its life. "Why are you so sad? Can I help you?" Thea ignored the sharp horns, knelt down beside the elk, gently stroked its cheek, and said slowly but firmly. The elk did not notice her at first. It only thought that she was one of the priests, but when Thea said these words, it instantly felt different. If she was not one of the priests with complicated thoughts, who was she? Where did this sense of intimacy come from? It tried hard to raise its head and opened its gray eyes with difficulty, as if it wanted to see the appearance of the person in front of it. Wow, the crowd made all kinds of unintelligible sounds. The oracle had a reaction to this outsider. This was the first time in their thousands of years. The priests' hearts were suddenly filled with thunder, accompanied by thousands of galloping horses. Of course, they were the ones who were struck by thunder and trampled by thousands of horses. They looked at each other and saw the fear in the corners of their companions' eyes. "No way?" Again. Why did I say again? This is different from the script. Chapter 206. Thea did not have time to think about their feelings. She only felt a weak connection between herself and the elk. It was not that they knew each other before, but it was a bond that came from the deepest part of their bloodline. How did I establish a blood bond with it? Thea was a little shocked by her own thoughts. Was it because of the unicorn? Maybe they were distant relatives? In a flash, he found a relatively reliable answer for himself. She did not understand, and the elk did not understand how this connection came about. It only wanted to see her face with its cloudy eyes. So sad. Thea was a little sad when she saw the signal. She made up her mind and hugged the elk's head with both hands and put her forehead on it. Thea was ready to transfer part of her eye power to let the elk see the light again. Don't. Diana only said one word before she stopped. She did not know whether she should stop or agree. She was so anxious that her little face turned red. What is she doing? Antiope saw the mysterious light flashing between Sia and the elk. Something she couldn't understand was floating around, which made her very puzzled. Seeing Diana's anxious shout, she asked in a low voice, "What's the matter?" Diana hesitated for a long time before she whispered, "She is transferring her divine power. She is also a child of God." With the common values of Paradise Island, she instantly thought of this word. As for killing a god, it was not in her dictionary at all. She is a noble child of God, Diana said with absolute certainty. At the same time, the spirit of sacrifice, protection, and dedication in her heart deepened by a few %. In fact, Thea was not as noble as she thought. She could help others when they were in trouble, but she was not willing to sacrifice herself to help others. Horace was known for his good eyesight. His eye power was almost endless. It was not an exaggeration to say that he could go up to heaven or down to hell. Now, although he only had one eye and did not have a body, the transfer of his eye power would only make Thea's eyes sore for a few days. It would not have a big impact. In addition, the elk itself also had divinity. It was just that its desire to die was too strong previously, so it did not heal its eyes immediately when it was damaged. Now that Sia's eye power had overflowed and its own self-healing ability, the white mist in its eyes dissipated at a visible rate. The elk saw Thea as soon as it regained its vision. It intimately rubbed its face against hers. Thea had used too much eye power at this time, and her eyes began to ache. She rubbed the corner of her eyes, and a few drops of tears flowed down her cheeks. When this scene fell into the eyes of Diana and other inexperienced young girls, it was like a man and a deer crying with joy after seeing the light again, causing the eyes of several female warriors to turn red. Sia was about to turn back and greet the bad priests. "Look, this young lady has passed, right? Let's see what you have to say." Suddenly, she felt the elk send her a "come, follow me" signal. The elk saw her squatting there in a daze, so it bit her sleeve and dragged her inside. Don't pull, I'll go with you." This guy was really strong. Conservatively speaking, she estimated that he had more than a ton of pulling force. He almost pulled Sia down. What was it doing? After sending several signals, the elk did not respond. It just signaled to follow it. Thea sighed and had no choice but to follow it. The few people who saw this scene were a little confused as to where the moose was taking Sia. Diana, who had infinite courage, was the first to follow. The queen and Antiope were worried about her safety and also wanted to follow. "You can't go up. That is the eternal resting place of the gods." The old priest shouted at Thea. The response to her was the moose's teeth and Sia's middle finger. The old priest saw the moose's sharp horns, and his heart trembled a little. Their Amazons were not the same as the animals who were constantly reborn on the island. When they died, they died. The GODS only gave them eternal life, but they did not give them the ability to resurrect indefinitely. If they were stabbed to death by the elk, they would really die. They were not afraid of death, but if they were killed by the oracle, it would be too bad. It would make them look like they had done something heinous. At first, they just wanted to take back part of the right to speak. It was far from blasphemy. Hippolyte, as the God King's mistress, was careful to play the game. They did not dare to do anything that crossed the line. The three of them could only watch in fear as Sia disappeared from their sight. As for Diana and the others, they did not dare to stop her. The blessings of the gods were not a joke. In addition, Many of these main gods were her brothers and sisters. She could wander around all the temples as she wished. Even the gods had no objections, let alone the three of them, divine servants. The queen's status was similar. She didn't even look at the three priests and walked over calmly. Antiope didn't say anything. She just pulled out her sword and followed after her sister with a flash of sword light. Seeing that the female warriors also wanted to go inside, the three priests were completely angry. "You can't go in. I have the right to go in. I still have the name of the gods." The black strong woman looked at the three old things seriously. She was very sad when they mentioned the name of the gods. Even the blind could see that Thea had won the competition. It was them who urged her to make trouble. Otherwise, how could she fall to this point now? Without waiting for the three to answer, she waved her hand and walked inside like a black bear. The rest of the female warriors did not have as good a reason as her. They could only stop under the strict gaze of the priests and look from afar. The elk pulled Thea and walked for a short distance. It stopped in front of a cave and looked at the few people who were following behind it. It had the best attitude towards Diana. It rubbed her arm and nodded slightly to the queen. As for the rest of the people, they were all ignored. It lowered its head and drew a deep mark on the ground with its sharp horn, indicating that the others should not follow it. Then it pulled Thea into the cave. The few of them knew very well what it meant. It meant that unrelated people were not allowed to enter. Even if you, Diana, are the sister of the goddess, you are still not allowed to enter. Thea could only say goodbye and followed the elk into the cave. The moment her left foot stepped into the cave, she felt that something was wrong. After experiencing the explosion of the Eye of Arcane Core, she immediately sensed that the surrounding environment had changed dramatically. A huge amount of time flowed around her. No way. Did I wear it again? But soon she realized that she was still in the original 1918 time period. It was just that the space had changed drastically. She was teleported to a very conceptual place. There was no definition of time and space around her. There was only silence and eternity. "Hello, young time traveler, I am Artemis." Just as Thea was looking around, a vague figure of a human figure appeared in the open space on her left. The figure was erratic. She could not see the face clearly, as if it could be blown away by a gust of wind. Chapter 207. Oh my God! Wasn't this guy dead? How could he appear in front of others? Could this space be? The humanoid shadow seemed to have guessed her doubts, and continued, "You are now in a high-latitude bit wall that must rely on the original space-time. What you see is a shadow of me projected from the past." Since the shadow had made it so clear, Thea naturally had to show her respect. She bowed her head and said, "Your Majesty, why did you summon me here?" The shadow did not answer her question directly. Instead, it reached out and drew a unique mark, opening a space channel. The old elk came to its side in an instant and rushed into its arms with great attachment. Thea did not interrupt their reunion. Or was this not a reunion? Was this just a short reunion at the angle of time? Her vocabulary was too limited. She really did not know how to describe it. She could only watch silently. Time seemed to pass very quickly. When the shadow of the goddess patted the elk's head and stood up again, Thea quickly focused. She knew it was her turn. The shadow of the goddess nodded slightly. "Time traveler, thank you for allowing us to meet again." Thea's head was full of question marks. What did I do? Didn't this elk pull me in? No. The goddess chose her words carefully, as if she wanted to keep it short. "I have fallen into an eternal slumber. There will not be a trace of divine power entering your plane. Now, I am borrowing the vast power of time in your body to pull out a fragment of time from the past." Her words were very strange. What projection? Fragment of time? Thea did not fully understand, but she understood one thing. She was using her power to create this high-dimensional space. There was a hint of displeasure in her expression. The goddess saw her displeasure and chuckled softly. "Little girl, are you angry? That's fun. But your power will dissipate when you reach this time and space. I am only keeping a part of it. Don't be angry." Ha! Thea could understand this. Her magic power had skyrocketed from 2008 to 2166, and now it had fallen back to 1918. It was as if her credit was good, and her assets were increasing slowly as time passed. But suddenly, an accident happened, and she received her future salary in advance. She could have paid it back, but unfortunately, she came back to the past and did not pay back her debt. Instead, she was overdrawn. Thea did not dare to imagine what would happen if she left the anti-magic zone. This was also the reason why she did not dare to leave Paradise Island. Time was too scary. Even the God King would not easily touch anything related to time, let alone her. Reverse Lightning was such a smart person, but he ran from the 25th century to the 21st century and lost all of his speed. He had to cultivate from scratch again. What a painful experience. This was a lesson to be learned from his mistakes. After thinking about it, he realized that the other party had taken a part of what he would lose in the first place. Although she had borrowed it without asking for permission, considering that even if women evolved into goddesses, they were still unreasonable creatures, and he couldn't bite her, he could only endure it. Thea lowered her eyes. "Okay, you did nothing wrong. Then why did you call me here?" The goddess stopped smiling and touched the elk's cheek sadly. "It is connected to my life. It has accompanied me for countless years, but in the end, it is time for us to part. The old gods will eventually fall, and the new gods will come back to Earth. My life is irreversible, but it can—" Thea could tell that the goddess was really sad. She had changed from I to I. She sympathized with the pitiful elk. "Do you need me to do anything?" The goddess's facial expression was extremely blurry, but Sia still felt embarrassed for a moment. "I still need to borrow your power to cut off the connection between it and me over the long years. I need a large amount of time power to bring my divine power from the past over here. Your sister, you're bullying an honest person to death, aren't you?" Thea looked at her suspiciously, waiting for further explanation. Seeing her confusion, the goddess quickly explained. "Of course, I won't use it for nothing. After cutting off the connection with me, it will follow you. It has a lot of combat experience and will be of help to you. Also, I can help you retain some of its magic power for about 10 years. Think about it." So that's the case. Thea began to think. This condition was not impossible. Thea could not see the elk's combat power. No matter how she looked at it, it was just an old elk. It could not have eaten the man-man fruit, right? She really did not see how it could help her, but the 10 years of magic power retention was very powerful. It could save her 10 years of time. It seemed to be a much better result than the previous one, which was 100% wasted and even had the possibility of getting money back. "Your Majesty, it was an accident that I came to this time and space. Will my bloodline cause me some time trouble after I leave the island?" Thea thought about it again and again. This was a serious problem. She did not want to be blown up as soon as she left the island, nor did she want to stay on the island for the rest of her life. It was rare to meet a goddess who seemed to be easy to talk to, so she had to ask clearly. Moreover, if she took away her magic power, time would come to her door to ask for money. If she could not pay it back, it would be a big joke. The goddess seemed to have expected her question and answered proudly, "Divine power can change everything. We respect time, but we are not afraid of time. With your authority in the Master of Time, I will help you to stay within a constant value. Even if you return to your original time and space, you will not lose control, and it will not affect your future development. This part will be your power from now on. The goddess also knows about the council of the Master of Time. Thea was a little surprised that those weaklings could be known by Artemis, a true god who had been dead for God knows how many years. I only know that they are not as simple as you think. I don't know more than that. It seems that the water is very deep. Thea could not help but be a little moved. Let Rip Hunter and the others worry about the council. Your Majesty, what do you need me to do? I will release the anti-magic enchantment on your body. What you need to do is to transfer all your magic power to me in the shortest time possible. After confirming that she was ready, the goddess pointed at her body. Wah-dash! The sudden surge of magic power made the high-dimensional space begin to tremble. Fortunately, this was not the first time. She summoned the unicorn that still did not understand what was going on. The two of them merged again and quickly gathered the sudden surge of magic power. Amazing power. It's hard to imagine that you are immortal. You seem to have a trace of divinity, but it is not the divinity of the Greek gods. The goddess did not expect her magic power to reach this level. Seeing that the space was trembling, she stabilized the surroundings and watched her merge and said thoughtfully, Chapter 208. She touched the ears of the elk beside her. She is a good girl. She will achieve great things in the future. I don't think you will feel wronged if you follow her in the future. The elk whimpered at the goddess. Although it was just a quick glance, it did see the unicorn that was dragged out in a daze. Although it felt that this distant relative looked a little silly, the elk, who was also a divine beast, still recognized Thea from its original friendliness. Thea did not know that the master and servant were talking about her. She thought that the fusion would go smoothly, but she encountered a little trouble. The problem was the little divinity of war that Arthas absorbed. The era of the old gods had come to an end, and the deification of faith had become history. From now on, it was the era of power, like Jean Chao, who was ranked third in the world and could beat all the other divine kings. He did not have any divinity. He only had incomparable power. Thea was now stuck at the time when the old gods had died, and the new gods had not yet been born. Divinity could be said to be a unique characteristic of the gods. It included their personality, beliefs, rules of conduct, and a lot of other things. Originally, Thea could not absorb it, and the other divinity did not like her. However, the unicorn absorbed a little, and this little bit was integrated into Thea's body through the fusion. She also had the eye of Horus, which was of the same origin as the divinity. After the fusion of the two, she unexpectedly also had a trace of divinity. What Thea did not know was that if she absorbed too much divinity, Horus might be resurrected with her body. Fortunately, Horus was not the god of war. Most of the divinity that represented war in his body was taken away by the dragon queen. After that, with the unicorn's share, the divinity that fell into Thea's body in the end was very little. It was impossible to rely on this trace of divinity to ignite the fire, build a divine body, obtain a divine title, and then happily crown her name as the god of war. But sometimes this trace of divinity determined the difference between a human and a god. Thea only needed time to completely absorb this trace of divinity. No matter how weak it was, she would be considered as having divinity. It took a Herculean effort to temporarily control the divinity. It would take a lot of time to completely understand it. He put on the golden armor again. Due to the divinity of war, the patterns on the armor were more detailed. Quick, you don't have much time left. Give me your hand. The goddess saw that she was looking at her armor and quickly reminded her. Oh, okay. Even without his reminder, Sia also felt that her magic power was rapidly dissipating, and the speed was getting faster and faster. Before she could see how much her armor had changed, it had degenerated from a full-body armor to a half-body armor in less than a second. The palms of a man and a god crossed the distance of countless years and finally clasped together. Thea felt as if there were two huge water pumps beside her. It was hard to say which one was pumping harder, but she could feel the energy that filled every cell in her body being rapidly sucked away. The golden armor turned from a full-body armor to a half-body armor, then to a chainmail, and finally to a leather armor. The only thing that didn't change was the cloak, but it was useless. Give me back my armor. Right now, Sia felt as if she had painstakingly planted the land, only to find out that the Japanese had robbed her of it when she was about to harvest it. That kind of heartache was indescribable. Fortunately, the gods, except for the god of lies, were all people of their word. Or rather, they disdained to deceive mortals. The goddess didn't absorb her magic power blindly. She began to help her stabilize part of the magic power in her body gradually. Thea didn't understand the method used in the middle, but she felt an indescribable charm. Okay. The goddess pushed Thea away and stood alone. Even for a god like her, it was not easy to transform a large amount of magic power into divine power. Thea wanted to cry, but had no tears. Although she was mentally prepared, this kind of loss could not be described without experiencing it firsthand. The elk seemed to be very experienced in comforting people. He walked to her and rubbed his face against her hand. Even you are comforting me? Sigh. I am still very strong. Ouch, don't push me. Okay, I am a little sad. My magic power is invincible in the world. Thea wanted to brag, but the elk, who had lived for countless years, saw through her disguise and exposed her hypocrisy. The elk joked for a while, and then Thea began to pay attention to her own situation. The goddess was not lying. Although the original magic power was very strong, it was also very vague and unreal. Thea felt that the magic power in her body was now a part of her, just like her hands and feet. The weakness of insufficient control had been greatly alleviated. She believed that after a few days, this part of the magic power would be completely integrated with her. After checking herself, she focused on the goddess again. The shadow goddess finger kept drawing strange patterns, and many shadows appeared one after another in this narrow space. There were young dancers, old huntresses, and female lords sitting on chariots. There were all kinds of shadows. Hoo-hoo, it could be seen that this kind of summoning across time and space was also a great burden on the goddess. She did not waste any time. All the shadows seemed to have received a signal and quickly rushed to her. Finally, they merged into a huntress in a green robe and carrying a silver longbow on her back. Thea was far away from the elk. She knew that the next step was to tamper with the elk's timeline. She was now completely afraid of time. The goddess method was not strange. She used her divine power to summon herself in different time periods, and with the help of Thea's power of time, they each projected a part of their power and merged into the current form. Although Sia was now a little stronger than Newbie, her previous height would not disappear. She had also fought battles from a commanding position. Her intuition told her that the current goddess was stronger than Horus when he first descended. As for how much stronger she was, it was hard to tell. But Thea touched her chin. I don't mind if you carry a bow on your back, but why are you wearing a green robe? This image reminded Thea of Olivier on Purgatory Island. Could it be that the green arrow could not be killed? Was he her true believer? Suddenly, Thea saw the goddess pull the bow and arrow and aimed at the elk. A huge vortex appeared behind her. This time, the space shook more violently than before when Thea exploded. Some of the ground had cracked, and the whole space was distorted violently. Oh my God! What did I see? Thea knew that her previous judgment was wrong. She still underestimated the difficulty of cutting off the timeline. The shadow of the goddess was just a catalyst. She was attracting the main body to come here. As the vortex expanded, Thea took a few steps out. She had no choice. She had felt a huge energy fluctuation on the other side of the vortex. This was probably the main body of Artemis, the strongest attack across time and space in her heyday. Chapter 209. The elk was on all fours, lying on the ground and shivering. Of course, it didn't think that the goddess was going to shoot it to death, but it was distressed that its master had wasted her divine power for it. So it couldn't help but lie on the ground and cry. Here it comes. The momentum of the phantom goddess reached its peak, and she loosened the arrow. At the same time, there was a crisp sound of a bowstring in the whirlpool behind her, faster than lightning, faster than light, and even faster than the concept of speed itself. An arrow flew out of the whirlpool and instantly pierced in front of the elk, while the arrow of the phantom goddess fell behind it. Two low sounds sounded in Thea's heart. This was not the transmission of sound, but some kind of conceptual resonance. The elk's past and future were cut off. A shadow that was exactly the same as the elk on the ground quickly ran out of the whirlpool, and the two quickly merged and could no longer be distinguished. The phantom goddess closed the whirlpool, and her green robe and bow disappeared again as if they had never existed. She gently stroked the side of the elk's face. "Child, you are free. Go and live a new life." The elk walked to Thea's side, and the goddess pointed at their foreheads. "In the future, it will accompany you until the end of your life. It will accompany you back to your original time and space. You must treat it well." Thea, who was going to ask how to go home, quickly seized the topic. "Your Majesty, can you let me go back to my original time and space, or let me contact the spaceship that I was on before?" The goddess was silent for a long time, as if she was searching for something. Finally, she shook her head in Thea's expectant eyes. "Sorry, I didn't find any trace of them. Although my divine power is not enough to search too far into the future, I feel that they are not in the same timeline as you." Before Sia showed a desperate expression, he continued, "However, after you go out, you can take my bow, an arrow. In the quiver that Father God made for me, there is a divine arrow blessed by Father God's divine power. When this arrow absorbs enough divine power, it can help you open the time channel. With your authority in the Time Council, you should be able to find your original time point smoothly." What did she mean, her bow and arrow? She didn't want to borrow it, did she? Thea asked cautiously and uncertainly, "What do you mean by bow and arrow?" "Hee, little girl, you don't have to test me. It's just as you think. I've already fallen, so I don't need a bow anymore. Your hunting and philosophy are very much in line with my teachings, but next time, don't mention my name when you're eating wild boars." The goddess' face could not be seen clearly, but after saving the elk, her tone had become much more relaxed. "Ah." Thea covered her mouth. Did he hear her nonsense when she was eating the wild boar? These deities have too much time on their hands. You're already a corpse, yet they're still in the mood for leisure. Thea smiled awkwardly as she hurriedly apologized to her goddess. What child's words were what inexperience? No matter if she was right or wrong, she should at least express her attitude. The goddess nodded and seemed to accept her explanation. Her tone became serious. "Where did the divinity in your body come from? If I'm not mistaken, this is an Egyptian temple. Judging from the divinity, it contains waves of unwillingness. Could it be that a mortal like you can actually kill a god?" Thea did not know how to answer, but she remembered the books she read from Diana over the past few days. It seemed that the Greek and Egyptian deities were mortal enemies. Seeing that the goddess was still waiting for her answer, Thea made up her mind and nodded. "It's Horus, The goddess was silent for a few seconds. Suddenly, her tone became high-pitched. Amazing! It's hard to believe that you can do such a feat as a mortal. I have to reward you. Ha! Thea laughed in her heart. She had made the right bet. There was indeed a grudge between them. This could be considered as a proof of his allegiance. We're definitely on the same side. She could almost see all kinds of divine equipment falling into her bag. One of the 18 types of weapons. She might not be able to defeat Darkseid, but General Zod should not be a problem. Awesome. Just as Thea was wondering if she would wake up from her dream, the goddess sigh made her heart skip a beat. It's a pity that I'm all alone now. I have nothing to reward you with, but I still have some of your magic left. What's the meaning of this? Now that the divine equipment is gone, you want to use my original items to send me away? Thea could not tell what she was feeling at the moment. She only felt that the goddess was a god. She was too stingy, but it was better than nothing. Just as she was about to nod, the goddess spoke again. I've converted all of this magic into divine power. You can't use it even if I give it back to you. What should I do? Sia's mood was in a mess because of her, sometimes high and sometimes low. She could tell that the goddess was not teasing her. She was indeed shy and could not take out anything. Seeing the goddess thinking hard, Sia did not dare to urge her. She could only stand straight and wait. Young time traveler, are you willing to be my chosen one? The goddess finally asked a question. Chosen one. The first thing that came to Thea's mind was the scene of Moira fooling the people. Those were her mother's chosen ones. But she soon realized that the goddess did not mean that. Thanks to Diana, Thea had recently read a lot of books about the gods. She had also attended literacy classes for 2 nights. Her knowledge of the gods was not shallow. She immediately understood what the goddess meant. What responsibilities does your chosen one have to bear? The reward was proportional to the effort. It was not that there was no such thing as a free lunch, but in theory, it was not her turn. The goddess waved her hand. I've already fallen. My chosen one doesn't need any responsibilities. If you're in a good mood, help me spread the word. If you're in a bad mood, don't. Such preferential treatment. Thea was immediately tempted. According to Diana, the chosen one was different from the priests. The priests were the servants of the gods. No matter how powerful the priests were, they were still servants. The role of the chosen one was similar to that of a disciple and an assistant. Seeing that she was a little tempted, the goddess added another weight. I originally thought that you were of the light attribute, so I absorbed more magic. I didn't expect that you also have the dark attribute, and a lot of it. If you become my chosen one, you will be able to master countless spells under the moonlight, and the power will be increased by 30%. I'm willing to be your chosen one. Thea immediately knelt down on one knee. It was too embarrassing to have magic, but not the corresponding spells. Since there was no responsibility or obligation, why not get a lot of free knowledge? Ahem, you stand up first. The goddess was a little embarrassed. She pulled Thea up again. In her puzzled eyes, the goddess asked very seriously, Time traveler, tell me your name. Thea's mouth twitched a little. Are you kidding me? We've been talking here for a long time, and you don't even know my name? This goddess looked very serious, but in fact, she was a little funny. After thinking about it again, she could not blame her. Horus, who was stabbed to death by her, probably did not know her name until he died. Chapter 210. This group of gods, whether it was Greek or Egyptian, had this problem. They looked down on mortals. Perhaps it was because their level of life was too high and they were too lazy to remember the short lifespan of human beings. There was an idiom that could very accurately describe their attitude towards life, and that was they were arrogant. Thea stood up helplessly and cleared her throat. Your Majesty, my name is Thea Quinn. Ahem, I remember. Come, kneel down now. Thea resisted the urge to kneel down again. Fortunately, nothing went wrong this time. The goddess conjured a shadow of a longbow and placed it on Thea's shoulder. She breathed steadily and said solemnly, I am the daughter of Zeus and Leto. My name is Artemis. I am the goddess of hunting and moonlight. Today, I bless Thea Quinn, my chosen one, forever. At first, Thea thought that it would be like a Western wedding, where she would have to say something like, I do. But the truth was that this ceremony did not require her consent at all. The gods meant what they said. If they said you could do it, you could do it. The goddess then repeated it twice in two strange languages. Thea did not understand a single word. A soft silver light connected the foreheads of a human and a god in the blink of an eye. Countless knowledge poured into her mind. There were dark spells, the sacrificial methods of the Greek gods, hunting and breeding animals, and even a lot of dance moves, and a lot of knowledge about brewing wine. What kind of nonsense is this? Thea was speechless. These gods looked very sacred, but they were actually very bored. Almost 70% of the knowledge that the goddess passed to her was about eating, drinking, and having fun. Usually, no one was thinking about fighting, and time was wasted. No wonder Ares could defeat an entire ship of them. But to say that this chosen one was useless was an injustice to the goddess. Although the specific knowledge needed to be sorted out, she had automatically mastered a spell-like ability. The goddess called this spell Eternal Night, which was cast once every 3 days. It could ignore the environment at the time and transform the night into a night with few stars, covering a radius of 10 miles. Within the range, regardless of friend or foe, the attack power of women would automatically increase by 30%, while the attack power of men would decrease by 30%. Such a discriminatory spell also depended on the strength of the specific target. If the target was too strong, it would not decrease by 30%, but it would definitely weaken the target. As for other benefits of the chosen one, such as increased lifespan and immunity to hallucinations, Thea was not in the mood to look carefully because the shadow of the goddess was more ethereal. Apparently, the magic that she had absorbed from Thea had been completely exhausted. The divinity that you obtained from Horus, I have completely transformed it into divine power. Divine power is the foundation of the future. I will teach you a method. If you obtain divinity again in the future, you can use this spell to completely transform it into your own divine power. After the goddess finished speaking, she sent a ball of light into Thea's body. Farewell, my chosen one. I am very lucky to have met you at the last moment of my life. May you walk a new path under the stars. Go out. Your future is still waiting for you. If Diana is in trouble, for my sake, help her. The palm of the goddess quickly enlarged in her eyes, and Thea only felt that she was pushed down from a high building. When her consciousness returned to her body, she found that she was still in the cave. There was no high-dimensional space, no goddess, only the mournful cry of the elk. Did she come out? Feeling that the magic in her body was less than 1/10 of the original, she sighed in her heart. This magic could be completely controlled by herself. She removed the fusion with the unicorn and lowered her head to hug the elk. Let's go out. This time, the elk did not hesitate. It kowtowed on the spot and followed Thea out of the cave with firm steps. As soon as she walked out of the cave, she saw Diana's concerned eyes. Before she could ask how much time had passed, she saw 2 meteors in the sky. One was silver, and the other was dark blue. They cut through the sky, leaving a long trail behind them as they rushed towards Thea. What's that? Thea did not see what it was with her powerful dynamic vision. She found that there were 2 more things in her hands. Artemis's silver moon longbow. And the other one? Oh my God! It's a quiver made by the father. The only person who could exclaim like this was Diana. At this time, she only had one guardian silver bracelet, and it was not yet the time when she would have a full set of god-tier equipment. Now that she saw Sia get 2 god-tier equipment, there was no need to mention how jealous she was. The Silver Moon longbow. Thea gently stroked the bow. The touch proved that the bow was not made of metal. Instead, it was a mixture of oak and some debris of the stars. The 2 characteristics of toughness and toughness were reflected in the bow at the same time. The length of the bow was 1.5 meters. It was a traditional ancient bow. The handguard was carved with Artemis's favorite. A pair of antlers was used as a symbol. The 2 wings of the bow were engraved with complicated and small carvings, all of which were praising the great achievements of the goddess. Thea slowly pulled the bowstring. A magic arrow instantly appeared on the string. After this standard movement, she knew the full name of the bow. Stars Fall, Artemis's Silver Moon longbow. It came with a magic arrow. Awesome. Thea carefully observed the quiver. If the bow was 100% welcoming to her, then the quiver was a little reserved to her. This dark blue quiver was made by Zeus for the goddess. It fully displayed the divine king's style, which was flamboyant and unbridled. Ever since the quiver was in his hands, it had been glowing, and it was always the kind of deep blue flash, as if it was declaring its extraordinariness. There were only 2 arrows in the quiver, or 2 kinds of arrows. Every time one was used, a new arrow would automatically appear in the quiver. One was the arrow that the goddess and Thea mentioned before. The arrowhead was dark blue in the shape of a lightning bolt. When it was filled with divine power, it could open a time channel. Of course, it could also be used as a lightning arrow. The goddess's original words were, "The divine power of the Father is unfathomable." He completely did not understand all the uses of this arrow. The other arrow was a sharp arrow blessed by the goddess herself. It was dark red in color. According to her, it was an arrow of revenge. In fact, Thea thought that it was an arrow used to bully women. As long as it was a woman who had lost her virginity, in theory, she could kill her with 1 arrow. Perhaps there were too many gods who opposed her in the later period, so the goddess rewrote her own doctrine and changed the group of victims to evil women who had lost their virginity. To be honest, Thea was a little sweaty when she looked at the arrow. At the same time, she wondered if there were any bad women in the world. The killing attack sounded beautiful, but there were a lot of restrictions. In the future, she would not use this arrow if she could. Whether it was the bow or the arrow, they could be stored in her body, and they were unique. That was to say, as long as she took away these 2 artifacts, even if she was in the original time and space of Paradise Island, there would be no trace of these 2 artifacts. Unless she was killed, these 2 artifacts would be bound to her. She did not immediately put them away. She still wanted to see the faces of these bad priests. If she put them away, what if they did not admit it? Chapter 211. Thea grinned as she approached the 3rd priestess. "You didn't wait long, did you? If you don't mind, then..." Before Thea could finish her sentence, the dark-skinned woman knelt in front of her. She held her short sword with both hands and sobbed. "You are the only representative of Artemis in this world. I am willing to return the name of Artemis and become your eternal servant. I will continue to serve the goddess of the hunt. Please accept me." Thea quickly glanced at the crowd and found that they were all surprised. This meant that this was not anyone's idea. It was the dark-skinned woman's own idea. She had to admit that she was quick-witted. She gave up the name of Artemis and became a servant. At least her reputation was preserved. If Thea did not leave the island, no one could banish her. However, her so-called eternal servant was a heavy promise. She probably thought that Thea would not live long. What a pity! Now, with the blessing of the chosen and the divine power and the life she shared with the unicorn, Thea could live for tens of thousands of years. The dark-skinned woman's plan was quite thorough. It seemed that she was not a completely brainless warrior. Should I accept her or not? She glanced at Hippolyte and saw the queen nodding slightly at her. Thea would not be so obedient, but she was already in a state of indifference. The queen's gesture made her make up her mind. "What is your real name?" The dark-skinned woman said, with a little pain, "Neobe." Thea took her short sword and returned it to her. "I am Thea Quinn, the chosen of Artemis. As the only representative of Artemis's authority on Earth, I accept your loyalty until the end of your life. I allow you to continue to serve the goddess." After saying that, she gently stroked Neobe's shoulder with the silver moon longbow in her hand. "Get up, warrior of the goddess. I'll give you a mission now." Under the dark and muscular woman's puzzled gaze, Sia pointed at the elk. "The task of feeding it from now on is yours." Sending the tanned woman to feed the elk was an important reason for Sia's final decision. As the daughter of a wealthy family, she did not have the patience to serve animals. Since the tanned woman knew the elk before, the task of feeding it from now on would be handed over to her. All of this happened very quickly. The dark-skinned woman gave up on the title of god, and the competition became meaningless. Only then did the crowd burst into a huge discussion. "Chosen one. This is an honor that only the ancient heroes can obtain. God is the only one who walks on earth, the spokesperson of God." "Oh my God!" The three old priests were completely withered, and the most important fighting force under their hands, the black strong woman, directly surrendered to the enemy. The remaining few female warriors looked at their eyes with a little distrust, although the voters were only designated by a single G. O.D., her status as a representative of the G. O.D.S. gave her great power to speak. The three of them had been talking about the 12 gods together for so many years. Now Artemis and the others definitely couldn't represent them. But they couldn't say that it was announced by 11 gods when they announced the oracle in the future. The whole could not be changed. This was their iron law for almost 5,000 years. Now that a hole had been dug in the iron law, the three of them felt that everything that happened today was still a dream. Thea was too lazy to pay attention to their thoughts. She just wanted to go back quickly and carefully study the specific abilities of the chosen one and the divine bow. However, Hippolyte pulled her, raised her arm high, and announced loudly in her puzzled eyes, "From now on, she is our Artemis, our sister." "Oh, Artemis!" The crowd below burst into cheers, especially Diana, who shouted the loudest. "Oh, I've joined the team?" Thea looked at the excited expressions of the crowd. This was no longer a matter of unlocking the reputation. After receiving the title of god, she was already a member of the Amazon team. Legally, from any point of view, she was a member of this team. Anyway, she still had to stay here for a few months, so it was not bad. Thea calmly accepted the praise of everyone, including the old priests who came forward and said a few words of congratulations against their will. Hippolyte ignored the priests who had ugly expressions. "Diana, you take Artemis to change clothes. The rest of you, come with me to prepare the ceremony to welcome the new sister." Thea, "Oh no, Artemis, let's go. The ceremony will be ready quickly." Diana dragged Thea and ran. Elk saw it and quickly followed. The black strong woman sighed and followed behind. "Diana, just call me Thea." Before she could finish her words, she was interrupted sharply. "No, you must maintain respect for the gods." Elk blabbered a lot. Thea was a little speechless. You don't have to be so respectful to the gods. In her opinion, the goddess is just a little bit better than a clown. You admire her so much, but she doesn't care about you at all. Although you are half-sisters, the goddess only mentioned Diana at the end. I'm afraid that 10,000 Dianas added together are not as important as her dear. Thea was a little speechless. The so-called blessings of the gods were most likely forced by Zeus because he loved his daughter. Thea felt that her time was tight, and her task was heavy. She had to correct her life principles and establish a healthy outlook on the gods. Otherwise, she would be defeated by her half-brother in the future. The three people and a deer left the tower and began to speed up. Thea now had one god's blessing. Although it was far inferior to Diana's 6 gods' blessings, the anti-magic restriction on her body had been lifted. She still had more than 10 years of magic power in her body, and a trace of divine power transformed from divinity. She was now more powerful than Diana, whose divine power was suppressed by 90%. Elks were animals that were good at running. The black, strong woman ran around the island every day, so she was not slow either. In less than 15 minutes, they returned to their residence. Diana took out a set of Amazon armor and asked Thea to change into it. There was nothing to say. For the coordination of the organization, they had to wear the same uniform. Thea had to change into it if she wanted to join them. "Can I wear underwear?" Thea asked Diana when she knew that she had to wear the half-body armor without any clothes. Diana hesitated and let her try it on. She quickly found the problem and shook her head. No, your black belt is too obvious on your back. You should get over it." Fortunately, there were shorts in ancient Greece. She did not have to walk around in a battle dress. Although there were no males on the island, the refreshing feeling was intoxicating. Thea's body was a little skinny compared to her peers. Fortunately, she was tall enough. Although she was not as tall as Diana, who was 8 meters tall, her height was considered average on the island. After changing into the standard Paradise Island uniform, she looked at the bronze mirror to see if there were any flaws. She was satisfied. She added a cape and a spear and shouted Sparta. She could go to the movie set next door to be an extra. She wrapped a few parts of the mechanical arm with magic power and put them into her blood space. Their ritual advocated simplicity. Wearing too many accessories would make them look weird. Chapter 2:12. Thea changed her clothes and followed Diana. "Why are we here? Isn't this a temple?" Thea followed them to a huge karst cave and asked in confusion. This place was very close to the place where the two girls were honest with each other 2 days ago. "Our sisters came from here in the beginning." Diana didn't explain much and led the way inside. Thea secretly observed the nearby rocks and landforms. "Does this mean that the soil that created the Amazon came from this cave? Should I take some soil back for testing before we leave?" She followed Diana into the depths of the karst cave. Wow, this place is huge. The karst cave was as spacious as a large square, and the height was at least 20 meters. The female warriors were all in position, half kneeling with their heads bowed as they recited ancient poems. Hippolyte's eyes opened slightly. When she saw them, she gestured for Thea to enter the pool in front of her. Thea had just taken 2 steps when Diana pulled her back. "Why are you pulling me?" Diana first pouted with her mouth, but when she saw that she did not understand, she could only whisper, "Clothes, bath." Although Thea did not have Athena's wisdom, she was still an outstanding, smart person among the mortals. When she heard her words, she asked in surprise, "Now, isn't there a changing room? I just walk in after taking off my clothes?" Diana nodded vigorously, indicating that there was no room for negotiation. "Oh my God, you are indeed influenced by ancient Greece. You are so open-minded." However, there was no room for hesitation. She had to make up her mind and stomp her feet. If she died, then so be it. They were all women anyway, so it was not a loss. Thea trembled as she handed her clothes to her new servant, Niabi, for safekeeping. The tanned and strong woman had been expelled from the Amazon and could not participate in this ceremony. Now, she was just watching the ceremony as Thea's servant. Shoes, Diana hurriedly reminded her when she saw that she was about to move forward. Thea took off her shoes again. Although it was not cold in the cave, she still felt chilly. It was less than 30 meters away. In the past, she could run it in a second, but now she felt that she had walked for 30 minutes. From time to time, she could feel gazes falling on her back, thighs, and many other indescribable parts. She walked barefoot on the gravel road. With her body that had been transformed by divine power, she would not be injured even if she walked on a mountain of swords, let alone gravel. However, she felt a sharp pain coming from her feet. Her nerves were tense, and she relied on her strong self-control to barely keep her pace steady. Fortunately, no matter how long the road is, it has an end. After 30 meters, Thea dives into the pool under the instruction of Hippolyte. She doesn't breathe a sigh of relief until the water reaches her neck. Bathing is only a part of the ceremony. She definitely can't be allowed to bathe for half an hour. There are 1,500 people below watching with their eyes wide open. After a brief dip in the water, Miss Thea was pulled out again. She quickly put on her clothes and followed the crowd to recite a prayer aimed at praising Zeus. Seeing that the old man's quiver is not bad, Thea also hummed a few words to make up the numbers. Hippolyte took the lead to welcome the new sister to join. The 1,500 people came forward one by one to express their blessings. They were busy for another hour. Thea was pulled out wet. Now her hair is dry. Seeing the crowd gradually disperse, she breathed a sigh of relief. It's finally over. Diana, take Artemis to the temple to leave an image. The queen's order made Thea's heart skip a beat. There's more. When she arrived at the temple, she found a few female warriors and told them the purpose of their visit. Thea then understood that the so-called image was a statue to be placed beside the gods. If it was still the era of belief, Thea might directly become a god after a few million years by relying on the statue. Thinking that the goddess is good to her, giving her pets and equipment, it's not shameful to put a statue beside her. Thea happily agreed. Who knows that this is the beginning of her nightmare? What? It's just a pose. Why do I have to take off my shirt? Thea feels that it's too difficult to communicate with these old-fashioned people. The female warrior, who is good craftsmanship and can be regarded as a sculptor in modern society, showed a bitter smile. She has been talking to the new chosen of the goddess of the hunt for half an hour. She talked from art to folklore, from folklore to doctrine, and led Thea to visit the statue room again. Indeed, as she said, all the statues were in a variety of combat postures. There were no extra clothes, just a cloth belt below as clothes. Seeing that Thea was a little hesitant, he began to talk about the beauty, the sense of honor, and the power of faith of believers. He chattered on and on about the benefits of all these. Thea didn't listen to the female sculptor's other words, but she did hear the power of faith clearly. Although it is not the era of belief, it doesn't mean that belief doesn't provide power. It can't be seen in a short time, but Thea is not a person of this era. When she returns to the original time and space, it will be 100 years later. The faith accumulated in this 100 years is enough for her to transform a lot of divine power. Then can we go into the temple to make a statue? No way. The gravel will tarnish the sanctity of the temple. No, we have to make a statue in the square outside. It is ventilated and full of sunlight, an important place for art to burst forth. The sculptor insisted that the statue must be made in the open. Thea thought for a long time. For the sake of that little bit of faith, I'll go all out. She couldn't help but look up at the sky. The gods have fallen. Batman's watchtower will not rise for another 100 years. So there shouldn't be anyone watching from the sky for the second time in a day. She took off her armor, wrapped a piece of linen around her waist, and stood in a place with the most sunlight. She was a little embarrassed when she carried the quiver. The quiver was slanted, and the belt just happened to pass through the indescribable thing on Thea's chest, making her a little breathless. Why is this thing so tight? She adjusted it a few more times and put it in a barely suitable position.